Crows flying over a city at night. A girl slowly approaches from there, nodding her head as she gets closer. A voice echoes in her mind, saying she did as she was told, for she went to the right place, calling the girl cute. Villagers find the body in a well, shouting that it was the demon's doing again. Then everyone gathers to cremate the body. The village leader trembles, leaning on his crutch. Some villagers tell the chief they're very afraid, but the old man tells them to stay calm, as the paladin will soon arrive, and the villagers repeat this, because as soon as the paladin arrives, the problem will be solved. The paladin is a powerful being with God's power. People gossip that they were saved simply by the paladin coming, but the village leader notices something strange. Turning around, he sees a hooded man and questions if he was there before. They wanted to know if the hooded figure was the paladin or a demon hunter. Then the village leader asks who he is, because a paladin was coming to the village and the boy could be in the wrong place, but he states that he is the paladin. Then he touches his hood with his glove while the old man questions if he really is the paladin. The man says he was sent with orders to eradicate demons, introducing himself as Eden, a paladin apprentice. They grumble that an apprentice was just a child, and that they sent a novice instead of an experienced paladin. The village leader bangs his crutch on the ground, looking coldly at Eden, trying to read the boy. But Eden doesn't even react to the villager's action. The old man thinks his village is doomed. Eden analyzes the tracks and says they seem significant. The old man says dozens of women have lost their lives. All were found twisted and withered. Eden looks at the burn mark on the tree as the old man says the paladin would be horrified upon seeing those bodies. The boy becomes excited, saying a demon that drained women's sensuality was exactly what he was looking for. But the old man scolds him, because it might sound rude, but he wasn't sure of Eden's capabilities. Eden responds that he understands the village leader's concerns, but he shouldn't worry, because he wasn't like other novices, deciding that he'd begin the exorcism immediately, ordering all girls of the same age group to gather in one place. The girls stand facing the knight. He continues walking towards them. Then he says that finally all were there. The girls were frightened and apprehensive, but Eden takes a deep breath, saying he'd begin the exorcism, emanating divine power from his hand. One of the girls thinks it was golden, wondering if this was the divine power used by paladins, placing his hand on the forehead of one of the girls. The energy illuminates her, but nothing happens, and Eden moves to the next. He notices a little girl trembling in the corner, so he moves closer to her, saying that the demon possessing someone was right there, emanating divine light. He orders them to hold the girl so she doesn't move, and the villagers repeat about the demon possessing her, but a boy runs forward denying it, standing in front of Eden, saying she's his sister who was sick at home, begging him not to burn his sister because she was family. But a villager tells him to stop pushing, because there's nothing he could do about the demon, as they must eliminate it before it causes more damage. Eden tells the villager to wait, because he didn't burn people. He only asked them to hold the girl to pinpoint the demon's exact location. But the creature screams that humans are noisy, shocking both the boy and Eden. The village leader says the demon has awakened as the little girl twists in dark energy, asking how they dare defy her master, as she'll rip out their souls. Crying, the boy calls out for his sister. Eden thinks Sebastian must be a demonic name and repeats about the denial of divine power, drawing his sword imbued with divine energy, and saying she was about to be fully possessed by the demon. Then he moves forward quickly, prepared to attack the girl. But the divine energy gathers. Eden stops his sword in front of her face, awakening the girl from the demon's power. The paladin asks if she was awake because she doesn't need to worry anymore. His sword was only for evil and wouldn't harm her. The girl begins crying, asking what she did. But Eden replies that it wasn't her fault, as it was the demon's doing, and they only needed to end its life, wanting to know where the demon told her to go. The paladin rides there on horseback and asks if this was the brewery she mentioned, approaching the place slowly, while something lurks in the darkness. Eden notices a strange presence, wondering if it was on the other side since it seemed like a cheap trick, and the demon dared to lure him. But if it wanted to play, he'd play along for a bit. He tells his horse they would head to the other side of Petra. His horse begins to gallop, heading away from the location. Night continues to fall upon the brewery. The demon emerges, complaining that his kind of prey never arrives, only cowards appear, claiming he's just shortening his list of targets, calling himself Sebastian the Incubus. Eden replies that he's not a fool when it comes to demons. Sebastian quickly turns to see who's speaking, but the paladin leaps from the ground to attack, asking why Sebastian was running away. He prepares a sword strike, which heads straight towards Sebastian, creating divine energy at its tip, and causing an explosion at the location. The demon, lifeless, is thrown back. Eden walks up to his body. Sebastian suffers in pain, severely wounded, but begins to rise, and the paladin jokes that it's precisely this regenerative power that makes demon hunting enjoyable. The incubus calls him a bastard and says he's taken countless demon hunters' lives, charging at the man while shouting his name, saying he painfully sent Eden to the afterlife. Eden complains that the demon talks too much, then raises his sword, yelling that he'd end this. He gathers divine power in his hand, emitting a light towards the demon. Sebastian screams that Eden was a dog of the order. The paladin repeats this, choking him harder against the wall, and explaining that he was far worse than that. But the demon's fun should be over now, and Sebastian begs Eden to wait. Eden responds with a smile that he can't play with demons like him, as that wouldn't be fun. Remembering the village chief mentioning Eden could even use his divine power for healing, Eden explains that it's a temporary measure, and the boy asks about his sister. The paladin instructs him to give her the flask when she wakes up. The boy notices it was holy water. He thanks the paladin, and Eden assures him she'll be fine after a few days of sleep. Then the village chief calls out to the paladin, kneeling and pleading to be saved from the demon. Even in the darkness, a small source of light could be considered precious. Other villagers cry, saying they pray to God for him every day, so the paladin should save them from the demon. Judging in God's name and pleading for a platinum knight who eradicates evil, he asks the villagers not to kneel, as he'll do his part as a human. The eyes of God that illuminate the night. This world called them paladins. Sebastian coughs before losing his life, but Eden turns towards him, explaining that what he gave to the village wasn't holy water, but a sleeping potion, because ending Sebastian's life before the girl wakes should resolve the issue. Eden's real name is Yu-Ji-Ta, and he decides to check his stats. His ability from the sun god Vachexer, called Noble Mast, earns respect and envy, trading them for divine power. Eden remarks that daily prayer to the gods kept the villagers knave. 2 years have passed since he reincarnated into the game and became a paladin, but he doesn't believe in God, saying even if they pray, it won't do any good. Sebastian asks how a paladin who doesn't believe in God could use divine power, but Eden simply stares at him, expressionless, changing his expression and calling him a bastard. His skill, Seeker of Destruction, gave him hatred for demons, increasing his stats when he took their lives. He charges forward with a punch, shouting that the incubus talks too much, hitting Sebastian directly in the face. Eden was tired of stories about a world governed by gods. Those peaceful days were destroyed by demons, and then he alone confronted the demon, Vachexar, the sun god. After his victory, people began worshipping only the sun god, and humans who served the sun god used their divine powers to defeat demons. That's how he obtained his powers, and that's the story of this game. A demon kidnaps a child who cries for help. Someone watches from behind the stone. Eden wonders why he was stuck in that shitty, terrible game. A demon punches the spot, knocking Eden face first to the ground. That game had been strangely familiar since its release. It was always known for its extreme difficulty. Eden identifies it as a minotaur. The number of people who completed the game was 0, then the minotaur strikes the man. Yu-Ji-Ta is thrown far away, standing in a crater caused by the attack. He groans, still badly wounded, spitting blood, unsure of what to do. Then he sits up, thinking it hurt and felt real. He sees 2 children begging the sun god to save them, as well as to keep evil away from them. Eden asks what they're doing and why they're not running, but he hears a grunt beside him. The minotaurs had reached his location, and Eden questions why there were so many monsters. He tells the woman to flee, but she continues begging the sun god, and the man urges her not to pray but to run instead. He wonders if he might lose his life in this situation. However, he sees a fallen body holding a sword. Eden moves to grab the sword while wondering if the woman would continue ignoring him. So while she used her hands to pray, he would use his to defend. A golden energy surrounds the sword. The young man identifies it as a status window. The noble mast ability from the sun god activates. He says it's a unique ability he's never seen before. As the monster charges, he feels powerful and believes he can handle it. Thus, he uses divine light at the tip of his sword, charging forward and cutting the monster in half. He stops behind the monster, thinking he defeated it easily thanks to divine power alone. However, the minotaur prepares to attack again. Eden notices and quickly turns around, coming face to face with the minotaur charging at full speed. The young man surrounds his body with divine energy, as he wasn't ready for this, getting hit in the stomach without being able to retaliate. He's thrown far away. Then the minotaur begins approaching once more. Eden sits up, still wounded on the ground. He stands, claiming it doesn't hurt due to the divine power. Demons have a weakness to divine power, so he can defeat this monster. Eden notices a new skill appearing in front of him, wondering if this was happening again. The Seeker of Destruction ability appears. The man complains that if he was such a powerful god, he shouldn't put this responsibility on his back and instead defeat the monsters himself. Thus, he waits for the monsters to charge, slashing all those in front of him. He felt stronger thanks to his new ability. Then he moves toward the minotaur's head, gathering divine energy in his fist, and striking the monster's head. Its eye begins bleeding, but Eden prepares to finish it with his sword. No one had ever managed to complete this game, due to its extreme difficulty. Eden thrusts the sword into the minotaur's body. The woman continues crying and praying. The man stands atop a pile of monsters. Among them, the closest person to finishing this game was Eden. He returns to the village with the demon tied to his horse, and the villagers celebrate the paladin's victory. The village chief thanks him, crying for what he did. He says it wasn't much, but Eden should accept the reward. Eden refuses, as the order doesn't accept payments because it's forbidden by the sun god. The village leader cries, calling out to the paladin. All the villagers repeatedly praise the sun god. Eden asks when the demon appeared in this village, as he needs to check this before leaving. The chief says it appeared about a week ago, and tells the paladin something strange. Eden puts on his hood to leave, saying it was helpful, and that he understood, thus deciding to depart with his horse. He thinks upon reflection it's funny because he doesn't believe in gods, but he was a piece of trash. a hypocrite just for stats. He had been in this game for 2 years, and the difficulty is insane. But as a paladin, he's been able to use his skills well, dragging Sebastian's body along the ground. Eden reflects there's only one way to advance, strictly following the game's storyline. But suddenly, someone calls out to him. The person in white clothing dismounts from their horse, saying they've been waiting to accompany him on his journey, and asks if he managed to defeat the demon, so Eden greets his master. Hexarath replies it's hard to believe Eden still remembers him, because this was his final training. It was also the last time he'd accompany Eden as his master, since of all the students, Eden was the only survivor. Thus, they approach the Baron's castle. Eden wonders about the bodies tied up. Hexarath explains this was the price the Baron paid to protect his daughter's innocence, although he never imagined escorts would pay such a price. Eden grips the horse's reins tightly, reflecting that a man's life was worth less than a fly, and this world was disgusting. But what he truly can't stand is having gotten used to this shitty world. The Baron shouts that it's about time and asks when he was planning to arrive. Standing in a vast hall with his daughter, Eden introduces himself, saying he is the Paladin apprentice Eden, and that he captured the demon as ordered, throwing Sebastian's body to the ground. The girl asks how he dared bring back the demon who dishonored her, shouting for the guards to take the head of the fool who brought this demon back alive. That is Eleanor Mayer, the incubus's victim and the Baron's daughter. Sebastian asks who she was, and what the hell she was talking about, but the princess uses her heel, stomping on the demon and saying Eden should have killed him and discarded the body, asking if he was incapable of defeating him and brought him back instead, and that's why apprentices are useless. She stomps repeatedly on the demon Sebastian. She glares at him in anger. Eden explains that the Baron ordered him to capture the demon alive so he could take out his anger. While thinking about how the demon asked who she was, it seemed like the demon had never seen her before and was being accused, but Eleanor calls him a piece of shit, slapping Eden in the face, asking how he dared talk back, because if it were him, he'd bow and apologize without saying a word. She prepares to hit him again, but Eden grabs her hand. The girl asks how he dares to lay hands on a noble's body, and her knight tries to draw his sword. Eden tells him to use his brain, because he's a member of the Order and will soon become a paladin, asking if he really wants to make the Order and Eden his enemies at the same time. The knight sheaths his sword with a snobbish sound, but the princess calls a maid, then slaps her across the face, and repeats the process. Eden asks what she's doing, but the princess asks if he has a problem with her doing whatever she wants with her possessions, ordering him to get rid of the demon because it was disgusting that he was still breathing, while Eden thinks she was using her position as a weapon, and it was revolting. Besides that, he was sure she was hiding something, so he says he can't take the life of someone like this. The princess asks what he means, but Eden replies that it's not right to take the life of a demon who lusted after her so easily. It might set a bad example. He prepares to kick Sebastian, landing a hit on the incubus's stomach. Sebastian asks if the human really thought he could do this and get away with it, but Eden tells him to shut up, because the only reason he was dying like this is that he touched her. Sebastian tries to protest, saying he doesn't even remember getting near her, and it wasn't him. Meanwhile, the princess's knight whispers for her to go inside because the situation isn't good. Eden thinks about how the demon claimed he hadn't touched her. Sebastian yells at the princess's knight, asking why he's pretending not to know him, saying he was in bed with the paladin, demanding to know if this was all a plan to summon him and sacrifice the village. Using a demon to deceive people makes him the real monster here. Eden thinks he finally understood, then cuts off Sebastian's head. He asks where the knight was rushing off to, because after defeating the 49th demon, he officially became a paladin, and he can't ignore what the demon said right before he died. The princess asks how he dares to believe a demon's nonsense over her word. If he intends to investigate, he better have a good reason. Eden asks if the bodies hanging outside are all the escort members punished for the recent incident. However, there was something strange about it, because one of the guards was still alive, and the princess must really like him. The girl demands he prove it, but Eden says he has another theory. Because Sebastian was an incubus who drains the sexual energy of women, the victims are usually found in agony, then die of dehydration. However, the girl seemed perfectly fine, and she asks if he's implying she lied. The paladin says that in the village, the demon appeared out of nowhere, as if someone had summoned him, and he asks if they know something, because he smells something coming from her guard, who is standing next to her, preparing a strike. Eden bursts from the ground and charges at the knight. He says he sensed the scent from the moment he arrived, the repulsive stench of a demon. The paladin's hand reaches for the guard. He remembers a blade piercing a maid. Being involved in a scandal with the princess, a voice asks what that scream was, since something must have happened to the princess. The girl asks how he was going to fix this, since she thought it came from the other side. The knight says the commotion was being caused by a demon. She adds that it would become true if a real demon appeared, because he said he loved her and she would give him a chance to prove it, risking his life to summon a demon. The Order would take care of the demon, and all he had to do was summon it. Then she'd consider how she felt about him, going from a mere guard to the heir of a baron. He explains that demon summoning magic would appear if he cast divine power over himself. As vials float around the guard, Exarath says that was the fake holy water he found in her chambers. because he could tell the guard had been suppressing his magic using it all this time. The knight protests it was all a misunderstanding, that he had a reason for everything. Azurath approaches, asking what that reason was. Eden looks straight ahead, saying nothing, while his master says he's a man of honor and asks if Eden wants him to investigate the princess's inner circle. Eden agrees and asks if it will take long, but his master replies that it won't, because a proper search of her chambers would quickly find evidence. He just needs to keep her occupied and leave the rest to him. The Inquisitor Exarath is a renowned character in the game. He burns the man with magic, saying it's a high-level blasphemy against the order to suppress demonic energy used to cause destruction. The princess denies what's happening. Eden steps forward, saying she must be involved in all this. However, his job isn't to expose the truth, but to bring justice to those who deserve it, and there's no evidence linking her to the demon. However, the word of a paladin is considered truth. The princess says she knows nothing and accuses her guard of doing everything alone, saying he threatened her and told her not to say a word or he'd take her life. She says she couldn't do anything, so she stayed silent, and that he was a horrible person, telling him to disappear from this world. The burning guard tries to reach for the princess, grabbing her dress with his hand, while screaming that he did everything for her and was abandoned in the end, so they would go to hell together. Eleanor tells him not to come near, but before he can fully touch the girl, he is burned to ashes on the ground. Someone appears asking what is going on there. Eden and his master turn to the side. It was the Baron, asking if his daughter was alright. Azurath greets the Baron, saying he seems surprised by the situation, but Eden tells the girl to hold on and stand up. The Inquisitor says that out of respect for his friendship with the Baron, he'll remain quiet, but he won't tolerate this happening again. Eden replies that this isn't normal. He's not the kind of person who agrees with this. But Xerath says purification doesn't distinguish between nobles and commoners, so they must be fair, telling the girl to consider herself lucky. The Baron thanks the order for taking care of the demon, but the princess gets up, deciding that she needs to rest, while Eden reflects that she was escaping judgment for now. But many people saw, and rumors would spread in the blink of an eye, a scandal involving a royal escort and a demon summoning, something the Baron would eventually find out. The end of her reputation, a result of her own actions. A bald man appears and asks if the boy is the famous Eden. He says it's a pleasure to meet him. He is Forel of the Southwestern Diocese, a bishop. Eden wonders why he's here, because in a game ruled by difficulty, he needed a truly evil character. Bishop Forel was the perfect villain, and Eden wonders if he appears mid-game because of the difficulty, but still says it's an honor to meet the bishop. The bishop apologizes, saying Eden probably just completed a mission and must be tired, but he returned to ask a favor. Although it's usually the Pope who ordains paladins, he would like to conduct a shorter ceremony, and Eden asks what happened. Forel explains that a group of demon worshippers was recently discovered. Azurath asks if it's about the demonic cult, and the bishop confirms, saying they discovered the cult is very powerful. It's not something ordinary soldiers can handle. They need maximum strength. Eden reflects that given the internal situation in the order, it's likely that support from other paladins won't be possible. But since it's Forel, it just might be. He asks Eden to be officially declared a paladin right there, because he wants him to hunt those who betray the gods and commit evil acts, since children keep disappearing, and it's a repulsive act of the demonic cult. Eden smiles and thinks, yeah, that's it, calling him a filthy old man. The predator, Forel. No matter which path you take in the game, you'll end up face to face with him. That filthy elder must be trying to intercept the children along the way. And if that's the case, Eden kneels and says that the will of the order is the will of God, that he'll gladly accept this honorable opportunity. Forel says here stood a child blessed by God and graced with his favor, while Eden thinks the filthy old man is in a hurry. The bishop continues, saying the child wished to offer his sword to the gods, becoming their blade. Eden wants to destroy the old man down to the root, and Forel declares that from this moment on, he is a paladin with the right to judge in the name of the gods, and no one can oppose it. In the guest room, a boy shouts that it was perfect for Eden. The man wonders if he's overreacting, thinking that in the game it was cool, but now it's just too much. However, the boy insists it was perfect, and a paladin is the symbol of the order, so it suits him well, representing authority, majesty, holiness, and virtue. He looks at Eden in admiration, the one who passed the paladin test in 2 years. That boy is Yuan, Eden's temporary servant. Then he says it's an honor to serve him. Eden recalls Forel saying that a paladin must be served and that he'd assign a recruit to him temporarily. The order's recruits are elite by nature, but this one is clumsy and physically weak. The troops assigned were far too weak to fight the demonic cult. Instead of sending stronger mages and soldiers, they sent a bunch of ordinary knights, so the children could be intercepted, and that's exactly what Forel wanted. To choose a cemetery to ambush his allies where the cult is extremely powerful. Eden wonders if there's a way to achieve his goal without them. Azurath interrupts his students' thoughts and says he doesn't seem happy, jokingly asking if he plans to fight dressed like that. But Eden narrows his eyes and says he has something to ask. He asks where his master has been traveling alone, and Xerath says Eden is very sharp to have figured that out. Eden points out that his robes are dirty and reek, while the master insists he wash them. But Eden's vision and sense of smell aren't human, and he thinks he's boosted his stats. Xerath asks if Eden noticed anything strange, since the Inquisitor is slightly obsessive and never acts against his own principles. Eden says the whole thing is strange, since Xerath was a total ally in this matter, and the master says he went to check out the ambush site, because there was definitely a lot of magic in the air, and he didn't want them to notice, so he didn't eliminate it. Then he visited the cemetery where they were going to be ambushed and found something interesting. Eden asks what he found, but Xerath explains that some graves had been dug up, leaving Eden in shock. Those were signs of necromancy, spells from a cultist. The master admits he's ashamed to say this, but he couldn't dispel the magic. Eden responds that if not even the master could dispel it, the enemy's level must be incredibly high. Xerath asks what Eden thinks this means. It could be a simple setup or a well-prepared trap. So there are two options: report it to the bishop or fall into the trap to discover what's happening. Xerath asks what Eden would do, and he replies that he wants to act and see things with his own eyes. The moon was full in the sky. The group advances toward the graves. Xerath comments that the magic was more intense. It's a perfect setting to face demons. The soldiers behind Eden tremble, asking what they should do, while the paladin thinks they're useless. He answers that they don't need to do anything, but is suddenly startled, because the ground starts to shake. A knight asks what that is, but Eden tells them to stay sharp. An attack is coming. A hand emerges from a grave, followed by bodies rising all over the ground, corpses already decayed from decomposition. Eden uses his divine power, shouting that the undead are attacking, while thinking this was a skill activation and there must be a necromancer nearby, but it's a great chance to gain experience. He channels magic into his sword, looking to the side quickly, coming face to face with undead. He unleashes a crescent slash, sending those damned demons back to hell, drawing a line in front of the remaining ones. Xerath thinks that thanks to Eden, he can now freely use his magic, saying he'll clean up this mess. The soldiers are stunned, while the undead are shaken, with their skulls filling with wounds, then covered by a green smoke, and exploding in front of the group. Eden is impressed at having eliminated so many monsters at once, and Xerath says he didn't break the spell when he arrived. The paladin replies that at least he was prepared, thinking that it was definitely Xerath. If he were an enemy in the game, he would certainly be one of the hardest to defeat, and Eden is lucky to have him as an ally. Eden says he's going to find the necromancer nearby when they hear a laugh. She says it's impressive, and she didn't believe they'd be so prepared to face the undead. But it would be a shame if it ended like this, asking, how about testing your true abilities now? Yuan warns Lord Eden to pay attention to the smoke that was forming. More undead begin to appear, their decomposed bodies taking shape. Eden says this isn't good at all, and Xerath orders his student to stay alert. It's not just talk anymore. The paladin says not to worry, he should focus on firepower, thinking he needs to hurry and get the necromancer. He turns and wants to know how the recruits are doing. The soldiers seem frightened before the undead. Eden wonders if he brought them in vain and tells them to stay back, until he's interrupted. Xerath says he can't keep fighting alone, and whispers for Eden to use everything he has available, even if it's little, and give them a chance, since no one is a veteran from the start, except Eden. The soldier is gripping his sword tightly. Eden stays silent in the face of his master's request, but shouts that once the battle begins, he won't be able to protect the soldiers. Yuan yells that he'll fight with everything he's got, even if it means going to the afterlife. Eden reflects that he was determined to fight, even if it costs his life, and he couldn't deny that determination. He yells that the heretic they all hate is right there. Their bodies might not be strong, so they must be careful. Once the battle begins, he wants a pentagon formation with him at the top edge, and they must maintain it. So the army charges against the zombies. Eden thinks the recruits will fight by borrowing the divine power emanating from him, even though they can't manifest it themselves. With a paladin by their side, they should perform well. It's not very exciting, but it's calmer than Eden expected. Xerath prepares a divine magic spell, launching it at the skeleton army. Eden reflects that his master is doing well as always, and the recruits are doing their part. But something feels off, because the magic is getting worse. If they can get past the undead ahead, reaching the necromancer will be easy. And if that happens, everything will be over, because the undead will return to their rightful place, outside of Forel's plans. But then, something falls behind Eden. He's stunned, wondering what it was. But a masked monster simply sighs. The paladin warns everyone to be careful, but a subordinate's head is cut off right in front of him, blood splattering across Eden's face. Eden wonders if it's a dark night, because they're the most powerful undead. A soldier warns Lord Eden that they're in trouble, since the undead are approaching and the necromancer laughs, saying everyone seems to be having fun. Eden is caught off guard by that, but the necromancer says the knight has recognized the paladin as an enemy, and has been wanting to fight for a long time. He's eager for battle, but unfortunately has other matters to attend to and needs to go now. Eden wonders if that was the necromancer, because usually, anyone with the power to summon a dark knight is famous, but he's never heard of this guy, wondering if it's because of the game's difficulty. The soldiers can barely keep up with these regenerating undead, and Eden can't ignore the dark knight, wondering why such a powerful necromancer exists this early in the game. But a blue light floods the area. Xerath asks Eden if he's alright, and if he thinks he can handle the night. The student agrees, and the Inquisitor continues, saying he'll leave it to him, since a drawn-out fight is useless. telling him to go and try to strike the Dark Knight's core while he goes after the necromancer and asking his student not to die. Eden shouts that he'll defeat the Dark Knight on his own and just needs the soldiers to handle the hordes because if anything happens, he can protect them, telling them not to fall while thinking they'll all be gone if Terath gets the necromancer, but he must assume the worst, since he has to fight with victory in mind. But as long as there's a core, the knight will regenerate infinitely, so that's his weakness, saying he would find the core and destroy it. The paladin imbues his sword with divine energy, wielding it against the monster of darkness. Eden tries to pierce the creature's belly, but the monster doesn't even react, making the young man uneasy. He strikes again to cut the creature, but it dodges, raising its hand against the paladin. Eden dodges and wonders where he should attack now, leaping from the ground with his sword raised above his head, but the creature protects its head, so the paladin decides to wait for an opening, switching the direction of his sword in hand, and delivering a horizontal slash that severs the monster's head. It falls to the ground before it can react, but it's still alive, grinding its teeth. Eden returns to his original position, wondering if it's over, but he is startled by what happens next. An explosion erupts in the combat area, throwing the paladin far away. Eden spits blood. If not for his armor, he would have lost his life, and he laments, thinking the head was its weakness. But it was already regenerating, and he wonders why it was protecting it if it wasn't a weakness. Eden begins to rise, thinking that even if it's not a weakness, if it's being defended, the weakness might be somewhere near the head. Eden says it was impossible, surprising the monster with his action, because he stands up and throws his sword. The monster bats the sword away, roaring with rage at the attack. Eden smiles because the weakness was the tongue. Then they clash swords again. The paladin still can't strike the creature directly, but he decides to remove its legs to throw it off balance and then strike, landing a kick to the monster's chest. Eden wonders if now he only needs to destroy its core, clenching his fist as he moves in. He says he will pierce the monster's liver, striking it with his sword. Eden rips out the creature's core. Then a message says his experience has increased for defeating the Dark Knight. Meanwhile, Exarath says the necromancer chose to go to hell because he was a demon who didn't hesitate to blaspheme against the gods. But the necromancer replies that his god is different, for he is devoted to him. The Inquisitor suddenly turns, seeing Eden and asking if he was hallucinating, wanting to know how his student was there and if he defeated the Dark Knight. Eden confirms, saying it was a difficult fight. Exarath replies that the recruits must have done well here, but they wouldn't find anything there. The necromancer mocks them, saying he managed to defeat the Dark Knight, but it was a shame there was no one stronger than him. Eden replies that he always wants fresh meat and a puppet he can move even if rotten, and he had many questions for him. Then the necromancer asks what made him think he would answer, jumping back and asking his lord to absorb him, for he offers his soul to his god. Everyone is shocked as the necromancer jumps off the cliff. Exarath complains that this is no good and without him they can't do much. But Eden channels divine energy into his sword, throwing it toward the necromancer. It comes very close to him, piercing and pinning him to a wall. Exarath jokes that it was incredible and asks if his student is a biblical character, but Eden replies there's no time for jokes and they need to reach the bishop. But he runs off saying he'll catch him and join them later, jumping off the cliff while shouting that he'll see his master soon. Exarath simply comments that he's gone, and decides with the army that they're moving out. Eden reaches a wall of the abyss, sticking his sword in it to avoid falling, descending toward the necromancer and his main sword. He pulls the sword from the wall, and the necromancer says having the ability to do that only makes him want Eden more, because according to his deal with the bishop, in exchange for him, he could have had the best Dark Knight in existence. Eden reflects that Forel had a deal with him, grabbing him by the shoulder and wondering if the human sacrifice scene had changed. Advancing to reach his master, Eden needs to check as quickly as possible, heading toward a fire that was raging, with several people lying on the ground. Eden thinks one of the nearby villages had been completely destroyed, but he hears a cry for help, becoming very alarmed by the scene before him, because Exarath is facing tied-up children who are screaming in fear, begging someone to save them as they cry. Exarath replies that it wasn't a good idea, turning toward his student and asking if he hadn't arrived a bit too late, then casting a fire spell. Amid the chaos, Eden falters and forgets something important, because in the game, Exarath is known for burning humans without mercy. Eden runs toward the fire thinking he must be crazy, but he had to save the children. Eden was never a good person. All the good deeds he had done since entering this game were just to increase his stats and, in short, to ensure his survival in the game. And in this world, everything revolves around pure strength, so since he didn't want to be stepped on by others, he pretended to be a good human, wondering if he should keep doing that. A blonde girl says it was a ridiculous life force. Eden is surprised by that. Seeing that woman in front of him, the girl calls Lord Eden, asking if he was finally awake. That was Uriel, one of the Order's saints. Eden asks where they're heading now, and Uriel replies, to the Order. The Paladin feels a chill. He gets up as Uriel asks him to be careful, since standing up so suddenly like that. Eden asks what the hell happened with the children and Terath. Uriel wonders if he means the ones caught in the forest, but before talking about that, She says he's being rude to someone who saved his life. The saint looks uneasy as Eden scratches his head and apologizes. Uriel replies that she's not a saint yet, but the children were purified and are safe. Still, he dodged trouble because she stepped in and the others went to the headquarters. Eden thinks that not only did he and the children escape the blue flame, but wonders if Exarath really didn't do anything else. Uriel says he did, although he never goes back on a decision. This time he did. The Paladin wonders what happened, because in every game route, that never happens. But Uriel didn't seem to know anything, as they were going to analyze the current situation. That was the Marcus flag, not the orders, so Uriel isn't a saint yet. Eden notes that she mentioned the others went to the order first, and Uriel agrees but tells him to rest a bit. He reflects that they're heading to the order just for Uriel's sanctification ceremony, but if that's the case, it seems like a minor route. And when he remembers correctly, it's in that place the event with Uriel happens, and normally nothing major occurs, but he says people posing as superiors will contact her and to stay away from them at all costs. Uriel asks what he's talking about and Eden replies that he's just repaying her favor. The girl tells him to wait, but he runs out of the carriage, heading toward the forest. Eden thinks that if she loses her life, it'll be harder to reach the second part, so he warned her just in case. Heading toward the order, but Yuan calls out to him, because he saw his lord jump from the carriage and came to escort him, coming close with 2 horses. Eden thinks his servant is alive, and tells him to hurry up. They'll need him, so they ride off quickly. Yuan comments that he's surprised, because he thought his lord was going to die. When he and the recruits returned after capturing the apostate, Eden was covered in flames, and he thought it was strange. How did he survive? Eden reflects that Esarath's power, the blue flame, doesn't extinguish after being used, so he says he'd love to hear more about that. Yuan says that the lord's body looked like it caught fire, but in an instant the blue flames vanished completely. Eden thinks that Esarath's main ability, the blue flame, vanished just like that, and that wasn't in the story he knew. The servant hands over a letter, saying he was ordered to deliver a card from Exarath to him. Heading to the prosperous kingdom of Arkham, to Exarath's residence, he was sitting in a chair, thinking about what had happened earlier. He sees someone hallucinating while screaming that they'll give everything, hovering over a wounded body. The older man watches that scene as the child calls for his brother, asking if he should send him to be with their mother. But someone interrupts Exarath's thoughts, saying that Lord Eden has arrived. Exarath waves, saying it's all right. And with Eden in the room, he says he showed up earlier than expected, and it must be something urgent. The Paladin remains silent before his master, but Exarath remarks that he's not very sociable, and his student adds that he rarely stayed in the palace, but the master replies he doesn't want to live in a prosperous country. Someone from the order said this is the foundation of the order, and it's ridiculous because the roots should be purer, but they're rotten, and it makes him feel like his faith is being torn away. He asks if his student knows why he's saying this, and Eden says no, but Exarath is struggling between choosing faith and practicality, heading to a room where Forel and another person are chained. Exarath says that the bishop was consumed by lust and allied himself with the heretic, making a deal to trade Eden for those children. The master laughs, saying that even though he's a paladin, he was only recently appointed and would not become a Dark Knight. But now they were caught in a difficult choice as events unfolded. A name came out of Forel's mouth, Archbishop Tegan. Eden thinks he's a moderator within the order who believes reclaiming the Holy Land is wise, and so says the radicals will gain strength. Exarath agrees because a war is going to break out, and while he agrees with reclaiming the Holy Land, he's unsure, asking what his student would do. The Paladin says that he was accused, but there is no proof, and Exarath asks if he wants him to pretend not to know anything, but the student replies that he wants to confirm before reporting. Then, the master turns and asks what he would do if he said he was going to tell the order to investigate immediately. Eden reflects that the Holy Land is infested with demons, and if they go down that path, it leads to destruction, so he says he swears by God that he will stop his master. Exarath laughs because his student doesn't hesitate and is always straightforward. But maybe that's the difference between the two. He snaps his fingers with a smile. Eden prepares to draw his sword, but his master says that it was God who extinguished his flames when he jumped in to save the children, because he hesitated again. Perhaps he disappointed God. He gave him a chance once, but not twice, and he's certain the next chance will go to someone more deserving. But if he's steadfast this time, he must lead them both to God's side, and Eden asks if he agreed with that, but Exarath wasn't sure how to decide. He asks for forgiveness for being a pathetic master who keeps stalling instead of deciding for his student. But Eden doesn't mind, because it's like that for everyone. Activating the blue flame in his hand, Exarath smiles at his disciple, saying that God chose him. Forel and the necromancer scream at him not to continue because they don't want to lose their lives. But Eden stares at the two sinners as they catch fire. Exarath comments that this now belongs to him. However, Eden suddenly feels unwell, falling to the ground as his master asks if he's alright, warning him that the blue flame consumes divine power and energy, so he must be careful. Eden reflects that he's glad to have grown stronger with the addition of this new power, but he doesn't understand. Until now, his growth had increased his intent, and it doesn't make sense. Then he asks if his master is okay while reflecting that he must be upset, catching Xerath off guard with the question. He replies that his student deserved the power and that he's fine, because he'll be happy as long as Eden uses that power for good. Eden responds that burning innocence isn't an option, and Xerath jokes that he didn't like that, hoping the public appreciates his sense of justice. However, the Paladin reflects that he has no sense of justice and knows what they need to do now, saying they need to speak with the Archbishop first and asking if they revealed any details to the Inquisitor. Xerath says no, because he only had some connection with the demon and wasn't the type to speak nonsense. Eden agrees because in that case, his master will have to meet the Archbishop in person, and Xerath replies that he'll be at the Holy Book's dedication, so the young man should wait. He understands but apologizes, saying his master will have to handle the rest of the meeting because he needs to rest, and Xerath understands, calling out to Yuan and asking if he's there. The boy appears and asks what the Inquisitor needs, but Xerath tells him to come along because he has something to tell him, then says they're leaving and asks Eden to rest upstairs, because they'll be waiting for him. A few days after that, the apostate's actions and the countless atrocities committed by Forel were revealed, and they began to be reviewed by the council. Even though some argued to keep the matter secret, the council was convinced that Xerath's actions outweighed the Marcus parade. In the basement of the southwestern residence where Forel served as bishop, dozens of children were found, some lifeless and most tormented. The church decided to protect and care for the children in a monastery. Additionally, a special task force of the order launched a large investigation into heresy, but without success, as only a few priests were identified. Xerath asks what his student thinks, because Forel castrated the boys, and he won't even say what happened to the girls, and sent the parents to the afterlife. Eden says he fears that the blue flame won't ignite his will. The master replies that it only burns when God sympathizes with one's convictions, and he used his judgment and salvation, but Eden's must be different. He reflects that he was given a higher innate power, but he can't use it, and if he had control over it, he could reach the mid-game, but he assumes he can't rely on that power. Xerath explains that there's no way to cultivate it, but he'll have to learn through practice. Eden notices something different in front of him, because Yuan was training with a sword. Xerath asks if his student has never seen it before. He trains there every day. He complained that he wouldn't be able to help in a fight, so Xerath recommended some exercises, asking if it didn't look like he was putting in a lot of effort. Eden agrees, knowing that as the eyes move away from Forel, they always return to him, the center of everything. In the dedication of the Saint's book, now at the temple, a Viscount greets Eden and says he's heard a lot about his reputation, capable of defeating a dark knight, and even surviving the blue flame, for the gods would remember his dedication in saving the young ones. But Eden felt uncomfortable with all the attention. The soldiers gossip about him, saying he didn't seem bad, but a paladin with only one servant looked poor. A man decides he'll greet him personally. He walks toward Eden, saying it's a pleasure. He asks if Eden passed the tests in 2 years, saying it'd be great if true. Eden replies that he did, and it's a pleasure, but he's never heard of the man before. The man remarks on the young paladin's lack of experience, but says he should go north. The paladin wonders what the hell is going on, but shakes the man's hand. He says the young man defeated a dark knight, and someday he'll hear the legend of the knight who destroyed the great Mount Bird. Eden reflects that it's a cheap trick to get attention, so he answers that rumors are rumors and facts are facts, wanting to know the point of spreading a rumor. The man's hand breaks as the paladin grips it. He wonders what the hell Eden's handshake was, stepping away from him quickly. He reflects that this is beyond a paladin's strength, but someone approaches, calling for Lord Eden. Uriel says he's finally here, so Eden turns along with the man to witness the holy presence of Uriel. She says the paladin's advice saved her life and formally thanks him in the name of the Marcus's house, as her father promised a generous reward. People start wondering if Eden saved Uriel's life, while the man thinks of the divine power he could gain. But Eden says he won't accept the reward. It was God who saved her. Uriel asks if that's really how he feels. The young man agrees, but if she feels that way, she can dedicate the reward to the gods. She accepts, but asks to speak with him privately before the event. In the back of the temple, Uriel tells him he can speak freely, and asks if it was God's will that he threw himself into the Inquisitor's flame. Eden thinks yes. He thought she'd ask about the processional attack, but says it was his will, since he has no reason to lie. As they'd be exposed to Uriel's ability either way, the girl asks why he took such a huge risk knowing about the blue flame. Eden agrees, but says it was for his own good. The girl replies it's ambiguous, but his devotion deserves to be rewarded as God wishes. She asks Eden to take her hand as he thinks about her blessing. Because it's a kind of stat buff, it increases his stats and doesn't rely on the luck of a draw. Uriel recites that the agent of judgment fulfilled his duties with the strength to face evil and care for the weak, spreading the teachings. And if God permits, she would share her blessings with him, asking if Eden will always be faithful, and he agrees. She asks if he'll spread God's teachings and take the lead in destruction for God's sake, and he affirms it. Uriel asks if he'll always be devoted to God. Eden answers yes. The lies don't work on Uriel. She is the bearer of a unique divine power called inner vision. The girl asks if Eden was lying. Uriel can see through others' lies, but Yuan suddenly bursts in, shouting that the Archbishop of Tegan is arriving. Eden turns to leave, saying he'll speak with Uriel later, and thanks her for the blessing. He'll use it for good. Uriel denies the situation again, wondering if it made any sense because she couldn't believe a paladin with stats that high. He still didn't believe in God. Eden and Yuan run to the hall. The paladin asks where the archbishop is, and the others respond that he's there. Eden reflects that there have been cases where a character's personality changed, but their nature never changes, and that hadn't happened until now. However, Archbishop Tegain was a missionary faithful to the order, yet the plot had been altered to make him evil. Eden introduces himself to the Archbishop. Tegain comments that he was the hero and contributed greatly to the case. Eden tries to remain modest, thanking him for the support, but the Archbishop says the order did nothing for him, since he did an exceptional job uncovering the case, and the Paladin notes there's no hesitation or lies in his words. Tegain asks if he would join him for a cup of tea after the ceremony. Eden agrees, as he would head to the Archbishop's office, while thinking that if Tegain is truly superior to Forel, he wonders if he already knew about him. Because the Tegains are of imperial class, nearly a divine family, the Archbishop says he'd like to hear the story personally from the hero. The young man thinks that nothing can be done at this point anyway, and the Archbishop agrees, saying they would meet after the ceremony. Yuan tries to argue with Sir Eden, saying he wasn't going to the ceremony, while Uriel looks coldly at him, asking what he just said, but Yuan dodges the question, running off scared of the saint. On the Imperial Street, the members of the Order march. Eden watches the fireworks alongside Yuan, reflecting that even though it's an important moment to pay critical attention to the saint, the people were celebrating and happy in that place. The young man thinks the Holy Kingdom is a world unlike any other. People live like cattle in a village that was turned into an agricultural zone by a demon, a lord who committed horrible acts under the demon's influence. But of course, that's not the only problem. People were losing their lives to hunger, wandering aimlessly, becoming corrupt thieves just to survive. Without resolving this horrible situation, he insists on launching an expedition for no reason. The real enemy was inside. Eden goes to a door. It opens after a few knocks. Tehain greets the boy, and Eden didn't know much about him until a few days ago. The Archbishop asks the Paladin to drink the tea before it gets cold. According to Eden's research up to this point, regardless of the Archbishop's lineage, he is someone with many contributions, a person envied for his status, power, and honor, and Eden wonders about the demonic cult and his secret communication, because the more he learns, the more doubtful he becomes, wanting to know how greedy someone can be. Tian says he knows the reason Eden is there, leaving the Paladin completely shocked. The Archbishop says Forel mentioned his name, and he must be aware of it, wanting to know if he's here to gain something from this meeting, and Eden asks if this is a confession. A guard lunges with his sword toward the Paladin's head, but Eden doesn't even flinch. He simply throws out his hand toward the assassin, and grabs him by the neck. He questions whether the Archbishop thought a sneak attack would work on him, but the flame begins to light up, and the young man notices, appearing in his right hand. Eden reflects that it was similar to the moment when he activated the blue flame back then, and was about to defeat them both. However, Tian shouts at Durrell, saying he told him not to step out. The guard apologizes, saying he thought he should because of the atmosphere, but Tian explains that Eden could take both their lives without even drawing his sword. So he apologizes and says the guard was only doing his job as security, asking him to calm down and listen, while the young man thinks that wasn't a sneak attack. Wondering how he knows, Eden realizes the flame went out and thinks he had activated it, but was mistaken, so he says he's listening. But he won't be merciful if the accusations are true. Tian talks about paladins being fair in judgment, and he can accept that, explaining that the demonic cult is growing rapidly, because even beyond the surrounding regions that are outside his reach, they are infiltrating and causing problems, and Eden reflects that this is something he had considered. The Archbishop formed a secret team to locate them, and the Paladin questions why the Order hunts public enemies in secret. Tian asks his opinion on why they haven't been able to destroy them in 200 years, and reveals it's because there are spies in the Empire and the Order, and that was his answer. Eden asks if he's implying that he's a double agent trying to take down the demonic cult, and still, being mentioned by Forel is suspicious. Tian explains that from the list of apostates identified by Forel, some had status, but their motives are questionable and they lack intellect, so he says he wanted to make a deal with them. But he had evidence of it, like a research journal from recent years, the investigation team, all the documents with information, and God was a witness in the end. Eden says that evidence can be forged, and the Archbishop asks if he would arrest him for not believing in his innocence, but the expedition cannot be halted. He wants to know if Eden didn't come to learn the truth without exposing it, and Eden thinks that if it's true, not only do the characters' personalities not change, but having someone just is a good thing. The Archbishop says he'll send all the documents to the Inquisitor's private residence and asks if he can do him a favor. He explains that it was a vast tomb where ancient warriors were buried, and the cult seemed to be trying to gain control over them. They tried to summon something using the heroic souls from the tomb, and children were kidnapped and sacrificed over the years. He asks what Eden thinks about that. Eden is in disbelief about it, because that was the worst of catastrophes, manticores, In the game, the cult begins to truly act after summoning this monster. He expected things to escalate, but not like this. At Exarath's residence, he foresees blood within the order, and Eden agrees, because with the expedition cancelled, the Archbishop would begin a great purge. In the many documents sent, information about priests who committed crimes and acts of apostasy were recorded in detail. Tegain had been hiding his claws for a long time, since he was waiting for a chance to rid the order of its rotten apples. People who could be helpful, like Exarath, were starting to show up, and if it was just to prove his innocence, the young man rides off on horseback, thinking that no, it's because they share the same mindset. And now they must go there, along with Yuan. The boy calls for Lord Eden, saying that this was the Juriel Inn. Inside, people complain that Daryl is drinking. The young man pulls out another bottle, while his friend asks if he forgot who is supposed to come today. But he decides to check later and tells him to stand still. Daryl replies they shouldn't worry, asking Sign to watch over him until they return and that nothing should happen. But it was just for reassurance, and the little girl agrees. Daryl is just thinking about the arrival of a paladin. Eden remembers to mention that Tegain's documents weren't forged and apologizes for being rude earlier. The Archbishop says it's fine. They can't blindly trust someone after all. But now that map was exactly what he needed, and Eden should make sure to stop the summoning, avoiding unnecessary fights since stopping the summoning is the priority, naming Eden as temporary commander of the special forces, and it was time for him to leave. Eden says he made a request before leaving. He wants a higher grade bottle of holy water, the tear of God. Archbishop Tegain gave the order to stop the summoning, but it could happen elsewhere too, and even if they stop this one, it might appear in another place. But fortunately, he knows when and where, so they must eliminate them before they grow in power, and that's why he needs the Tear of Da. Yuan calls for Eden and says that this is Juriel Inn. They enter the inn, which sits in the land of the dead. The boy says it's nice there, and they should head to the 3rd floor. But Eden trips over a bottle of alcohol. Daryl apologizes and asks who they are, but Sign yells at her brother, wanting to know what he was doing, asking if he forgot what's supposed to happen today, and Daryl guesses that Eden is the Holy Knight, apologizing for the lack of manners, saying he's just a humble person. Eden reflects that he smells of tobacco and alcohol and wonders if it's because his attributes are too high, then tells him to brush his teeth, and Daryl replies that if it's an order, it should be done properly. Sane apologizes for her drunk brother and says she'll talk to him. Eden kneels and gently asks the girl her name, and she introduces herself. Then the Paladin asks the girl to leave them alone for a moment. Sane says she needs to take care of her brother, but Eden swears nothing will happen. Yuan walks off with the little girl and tells her not to worry. Eden isn't the kind to break promises. The Paladin says that Daryl is full of discontent, and he asks what Eden means. He just doesn't know how skilled he is and doesn't believe the rumors. Eden reflects that he didn't recognize him and didn't like his attitude, but he had his own opinion, saying that he's a demon hunter and must have some skills. Daryl says that among demon hunters, those who don't know him are small fry. Eden rips the gloves from his hands and says it's great, because the loser must obey without complaints, and the hunter agrees. He even says he'll lick his shoe if he's strong enough, drawing dual daggers. He tries to land a slash, but Eden dodges, trying to strike again, but the Paladin evades every blow. Daryl attempts an aerial attack, but only hits the ground. Eden reflects that he was fast and moved well. However, at that speed, he couldn't even get close to the tips of his hair. He moves in to grab the hunter, and slams him into the ground with a hand-to-hand strike. Daryl grins, creating pink chains around his daggers. Eden wonders if it's a chain made of ki, but two people interrupt, asking what's going on there, calling out to the Paladin and Daryl. The demon hunter decides to surrender unconditionally and admits defeat, wanting to know if it was wrong to have a reason not to trust the rumors, since no one dared to fight a Dark Knight, let alone defeat one barehanded. Eden reflects that the skill and personality were good, but the exaggerated, dramatic attitude was irritating. Daryl formally introduces himself as a demon hunter and a man who works for a price, and the young man thinks his character is strange. Seated at the table, the girl says they should have fetched him, but their paths diverged, and with Daryl introducing himself, they formed the team designated by the Archbishop. The young man introduces himself as Father Bandel, the one with knowledge to decipher the temple's mysteries, and the girl is Knight Sebastine, who works with magic. Daryl asks the Paladin what this atmosphere is, because he almost got the wrong idea entirely, but Eden grabs his hand and breaks it. The hunter asks what he's doing all of a sudden, while Eden wonders why he's even doing this, and why this guy is so unpleasant, but says he needs training in etiquette. Daryl jokes that he suddenly became his teacher and apologizes, but either way, it's his turn to introduce himself, and he says he's a jack of all trades with combat experience, but Eden notes that he's not offended about having his hand broken. Then he introduces himself as a paladin and says his powers can last more than a day, reflecting that Uriel's buff is playing a big role. Bandel is surprised that he's suddenly a paladin, and Yuan flatters his master, while Sebastine says this could be recorded in historical texts in the future. Eden thanks her and asks Sign to introduce herself. The girl says she's a mage and Daryl's younger sister. Her brother praises her for being high-ranking and insists Eden would be shocked, while Sign tells her brother to shut up and Eden reflects that a 10-year-old being so high level is impressive. She must have been a major name in the game, but he doesn't remember her, so he asks if her name is Sane, and the girl agrees, saying it was given by her master. The Paladin asks the name of her master, since she was trained by him, but Sine says her master didn't tell her. Daryl comments that their master was eccentric and didn't say anything special about himself, but they should move on to the current mission. The Paladin thinks that this mission should be carried out individually, since it's important to trust one another to fulfill their duties faithfully, and for him, he was hiding something, so it was hard to trust Daryl. Besides that, the smell was horrible, and although it wasn't exactly bad, it felt like a demon was standing beside him, so he asks the hunter to follow him. The man asks why so suddenly, saying that what he said about licking his shoe was just an expression. He wouldn't actually do something like that. It's inappropriate. But Eden calls him noisy, heading outside and asking what his master's name is, since he knows but won't say, and grabs the man's face, saying he doesn't need him to speak, because he finally understands why he was so irritating, and it would be a waste since it's the highest quality holy water, but just a single drop would be enough, pouring holy water into his eye. Eden calls Daryl's name, asking how he dares to stand before him, acting like a human, ordering the half-blood to show his true face, and wanting to know why the snake-faced demon was trying so hard to suppress his screams, because this wasn't just normal holy water, and it must be hard to endure. But Daryl continues releasing his aura. The demon tries to call out to his sister, but Eden throws him down, saying if he has something to say, he better say it now, because he didn't think he'd beg for his life, while Sebastine yells at Eden to open the door. The Paladin asks if they shouldn't wait, but the girl says it's urgent. She was supposed to report this to him earlier, but the siblings are only half-siblings, and one of their grandparents was a demon. Around the middle of the game, no matter which path is chosen, an incident occurs where someone destroys the Order's base, and the person responsible for it is the great mage Kedak. The reason he did it was simply for revenge, and at the root of that revenge were his half-blooded disciples who were cruelly manipulated and then discarded, so he nurtured a deep hatred for the Order. Sebastine says that under the Archbishop's orders she watches over and protects the siblings, and Bandel explains that he even goes on missions with them at times. Eden assumes that this is the half-brother in question, and that the Archbishop thought he wouldn't notice, but Sebastine denies that, saying the Archbishop expected him to notice. The Paladin asks what he was told to do afterward, but the girl goes silent, while Daryl trembles on the floor, because Eden can pass judgment and use him if he deems necessary for the mission. Otherwise, he can even take his life. Furthermore, whatever he decides to do will not be questioned by the Archbishop until the mission ends. Eden reflects that if he kills this guy, Kedak will turn the Holy Kingdom into a wasteland, because aside from being a top-ranking paladin, there's no one like him, so Eden has to be careful. He orders them to bring Sine there, but her brother tries to stop it, because Sine doesn't know. Grabbing Eden's shoulder, he begs him not to do it, but Eden grabs his neck and asks how he dares to interfere. He must shut up and only speak when spoken to. Sebastine explains that actually, Sine doesn't know about any of this, because it was never mentioned before, and she hasn't been rejected by holy power. Eden reflects that he doesn't know how, but it's possible it comes from Kedak. He had wondered why Kedak left her there. Yuan talks about Eden's fight with the Dark Knight impressing the girl, while the Paladin thinks there was a genius among Kedak's disciples. Sebastine says she's been feeling that way in recent months while observing the siblings. Sine says that according to the stories, the Paladin was truly amazing and would always be remembered, and then the Knight says they were closer to humans. Bandel asks him to show a bit of mercy, and Eden notices both of them sympathize with the siblings. To think that even a priest and a knight would defend a demon, but the priest says the blood in their veins is more human than anyone else's. Eden doubts such words could be spoken while being questioned by the Inquisitor, and says he'll postpone this meeting for now. The three remain silent in the room. Sine asks if Lord Eden has returned, and Yuan wonders if his boss finished the conversation. But the Paladin walks right past the two, leaving the girl and the man confused, wondering what they talked about. However, Yuan says it'll be fine and that she shouldn't worry, and the girl agrees, falling silent as they think. She asks if she should do it that way for her master. Kedak is surprised by the radius of destruction, saying she was already this strong, and Daryl excitedly says it's hopeless when it comes to magic. Their grandfather says his granddaughter has natural talent for magic, but there's no end to development. She could still improve, while the elder hugs his sister. Kedak tells them their abilities shouldn't be used by just anyone, and they should only keep honing and sharpening them. Daryl jokes that if the master is a mage, he should teach them magic, and the girl asks if he has any skills. The old man smacks his grandson on the head and asks what he's talking about, while Daryl complains, asking why he hit him. Night falls once again in the desert. Eden reflects that after resting a little, he'll return, because what matters is that he discovered the reason behind Kedak's incident, and Tigan was behind it, using people when needed, and when they were no longer useful, discarding them without mercy. The knight and the priest, who were supposed to kill the demon, ended up sympathizing instead. Everything was contradictory to Eden, but the young man sees Sine and Yuan sitting ahead. The girl says that after she gave this necklace, her master disappeared, and not long after, she and her brother were dragged into the order for no reason. The Paladin stays silent as he listens to that, but the Archbishop told the girl that her parents and their master committed a horrible crime. The crimes were so great that they could never be forgiven, and they must atone for them by following the commands of the order. Thus, the siblings walk while talking about what their master said, about the great hero who could free them from their cruel fate. Daryl places his hand on the girl's head, and she gets annoyed, telling him not to do that. But the older brother just smiles at her, saying that it was all a lie, because freedom obtained through begging was useless to them both. Eden reflects that Daryl was right, because these siblings will never be saved, because God and the Order will never forgive them, and it was a miserable fate. Then he turns around thinking he was the biggest hypocrite, remembering when he said that even if someone prays to God, they would only bring chaos, and wondering if he even has the right to get angry at the hypocrisy of others. Sign pleads for the necklace to release them from their fate, because when a hero appears who can rewrite history, the light will come, and if what he said before is true, then clearly someone like the Paladin will be the hero her master spoke of. But she believes her brother is right this time, because he's an idiot and their master's words are always right. However, a light surrounds the girl, causing the necklace to glow with golden light. She asks why this is happening all of a sudden, because that shouldn't be possible. Yuan is amazed to learn that the siblings are half demons. Eden confirms it, leaving his disciple speechless. Thinking about everything he had been through, each person has different thoughts. As time passes, on the day of the mission, the group arrives at the ruin, and Eden thinks that this was a secret entrance only he knows about. He tells the group to take a moment before preparing to go in, and the members agree. But Sign calls out to the Paladin. Eden turns and sees the golden light, asking if that was an ancient artifact, an artifact capable of guiding its bearer through the ruins, and if it wasn't the Pope's. That would be impossible, because the Order not only used and discarded the siblings, but was also draining them dry, and Sign says that when she looked at the necklace, it seemed like the Paladin was its true owner, asking him to accept it, while Eden wonders if she's giving it to him. The little girl says her master spoke of a hero who could rewrite history, and the jewel would respond to him, and it could also free someone from their sins and fate. Her master told her to give the necklace to the hero after that, but freedom isn't something to beg for. So since he seems to be the owner, she would give it to him, since last night, she met Sir Paladin and the necklace began to shine. Eden wonders if it was really last night, wondering if it could be at that moment, and if it responded to his compassion for the siblings, which is why it glowed like that. A truly impressive magic. Because Daryl wasn't the type to give the necklace away willingly, and besides, Sign is a pure child, so the chance of him feeling compassion for her was much greater. So he must have used some spell to hide only Sign's identity, who now says it would guide the Paladin to the ruins where the sacred relic is. And if they truly try, one day God will forgive them, and Eden reflects that Kadak probably wanted to use this to manipulate the hero. The girl says that at this rate there will be no salvation, while the Paladin wonders if she would still think that way if she knew she was a half-breed. Sign tries to respond when he takes the necklace, but Eden had one condition, saying he would repay her for doing this, and telling everyone to listen carefully, because they'll be entering through a secret passage they don't know, to stop the summoning ritual. The ritual proceeds by placing the catalyst and the sacrifice in specific locations and connecting those points using enchantments, and then souls are offered to the devil. Once he consumes all the souls, the summoning will begin, so they must infiltrate and neutralize the catalyst. Not long ago, a scouting team drew the transfer circle at the location he indicated earlier, and they will move in groups using scrolls. Once the mission is complete, everyone must meet at the rendezvous point, reminding them that the meeting point is the bottom of the altar on the 3rd basement level, and the group says they understand. Then a summoning circle appears beneath them as the young man says he's going, wishing that everyone returns safely. On the 2nd basement level of the Grand Tomb, Eden thinks that honestly, the repugnant atmosphere was everywhere and unbearable. 2 people walk beside him and say they don't recognize his face and ask what group he's from. But Eden looks at them with irritation, killing them without remorse, claiming they were just weaklings of no importance. Eden's mission was to free the imprisoned souls using holy water, and the goal was to replace the sacrifice in order to weaken the summoned demon. On the 1st basement level of the Great Tomb, there was Yuan. The boy wonders why he was assigned to a place like this, while cultists ask who they are and where they came from. Daryl asks if the recruit would really be able to complete the mission in that state, but the knight retorts that his team should go first, yet the hunter considered him a spectacle. Yuan complains about being seen that way, thinking how this half-demon stayed quiet in front of Lord Eden. They need to calm down because before, he would have run away, but not anymore. Even if he's a half-demon, Eden chose him, and there must be a reason for that, so he yells that they will avoid unnecessary fights at all costs and asks for cooperation. The cultists say they look like demon hunters and wonder why they're there, but Yuan charges at them, using an aerial strike with his sword and anchoring himself into the base of the mountain. A cultist is shocked and asks what he's planning, but Yuan tells Daryl to throw the smoke grenade. Daryl's mission was to use his special speed and stealth skills to support Yuan. The cultists wonder what's happening, while the hunter jokes about them squirming, but the knight tells him to use the chance to pull him up. Daryl jokes that he didn't even need to say it. He was going to do that once the smoke cleared. Yuan shouts that he sees the catalyst and will deal with it as soon as he lands, since that's his mission. To use holy water to destroy as many scattered catalysts as possible. Daryl sighs as everything's been done, and thinks the knight seemed weak, but he's actually not bad. He has the guts to jump in without hesitation, and Yu-won jokes that he tried it after watching someone else. Then the hunter admits he thought it'd be tough at first. He hands over the holy water, asking why Daryl doesn't do it, but he refuses, scared because only someone from the order should use it. So they decide to hurry, while silently criticizing themselves. On the third basement level of the Great Tomb, Sebastien, Bandel, and Sign's group says they found the altar, but it looks like the ritual is about to start soon. The priest complains that 2 maid children were sacrificed, and says he'll inform everyone of the location immediately, since his mission is to use the scroll to do so. Sebastien pleads, as her mission is to protect the 2 of them. Bandel begins using the scroll with his magic. Yuan runs in, telling Daryl they've got a communication, so they should leave the weak ones behind and regroup now, while the hunter asks for the location. Eden says they found the altar, but he feels a strange sensation, saying this feeling means it's finally begun. Finally, the most important mission was Sign's, to destroy the summoning seal, and for that, once the seal is formed, everyone will gather first and then unite with the seal breaker. Sebastien announces that the seal has started to appear and tells her to take care of it, but the girl is in shock. She asks to wait a moment, since the method to destroy it is different from what she was told. It's such a complex and massive summoning ritual that it's still beyond her abilities to undo it. A strong wind blows against the group, leaving the 3 of them frightened, as something begins to emerge from within that strange seal. Daryl approaches and asks about the seal, but Sign says she can't do it. She needs the Paladin's holy power. Even if it's possible, the ritual will be completed before she can dismantle the seal. Eden appears and says it doesn't matter if it's summoned, because the Manticore requires 2 sacrifices in total, 1 before and 1 after the summoning, and that's why they freed the souls of the tomb's heroes. They replaced the summoning sacrifice with a weaker follower of the demonic cult and destroyed the catalyst. If everything goes according to plan, it will be summoned in an incomplete form, and if they can save the final sacrifice it needs, they'll have a good chance. So he orders Bandel and Sane to hold their positions, while Yuan and Sestini provide cover, because Daryl will go with him. Yuan agrees while the rest of the group questions it. Celestine says the seal hasn't been broken yet, but Eden denies that they will not retreat, and they shouldn't worry, because it doesn't matter if the demon is summoned. He orders Bandel to protect the children from the demon, and Sign to use her magic to aid the summoning, because they'll bring it here and defeat it. The girl shouts that the act of summoning the demon is absurd, but the Paladin says everything will be fine, and she shouldn't worry, just trust him with the necklace her master recognized. Sign is left speechless by this, but Eden begins to move forward, heading toward the seal along with Daryl. The young man readies his sword. Daryl simply reflects that the sacred power is very strong, while Eden thinks Sign's purity and talent are good. But when it comes to Daryl, he wasn't sure. His situation is unfortunate, but if he lets emotions take over, it could ruin the entire plan, and one mistake is more than enough. Remembering a woman with golden hair and blue eyes. In the moment of judging evil, one must set aside emotional attachment, and for that reason, if they want to free the siblings from the order, they need a justification for why Daryl is also necessary, even if it's a form of self-justification. He says that even the lower demons were sensing the scent and approaching, then slashes with his sword, calling them filthy vermin, slicing off several demons' heads and finally calling for Daryl, because if he wants to remain by his sister's side, he must prove his worth. The hunter thinks that if he can't prove it, he might become like those demons, then creates several daggers with a smile, saying Eden underestimated his power, calling him Paladin in the end. The cultists repeat the word Paladin and wonder how he knew they were there, and they discover the group's location, so Yuan alerts Celestine that their position has been exposed. Sign shouts that everything is fine and calls out to the Paladin, because they succeeded and it looked like the summoning was about to happen. A demonic energy begins to break the barrier. Eden grips his sword tightly while shouting that he will destroy it along with the seal, pouring all his power into it, and being sucked into the hole. Yuan calls out to Lord Eden, and Sign comments that the Paladin is truly incredible. Daryl jokes that he was reckless, and that the Knight's Leap was something he learned from him. Eden notices something strange as he descends. The demon laughs at him, saying his effort was in vain and the summoning was a success. But Eden calls out to everyone as he approaches, driving his sword into the creature's eye, since they had all been waiting for that moment, and thus using his divine power. The demon screams, calling them miserable humans, and calls out for the sacrifice, while Sign decides that now she will protect the children. Eden reflects that the demon was summoned incompletely and was greatly weakened, while it murmurs, asking where its sacrifice is. If the sacrifice is hidden by sacred power, they just need to capture it. Daryl stops attacking, saying he can't reach him because he's ascending into the sky, rising from the ground while Eden still has his sword buried in the demon. The Paladin tells Daryl to go with him, and the hunter grabs the demon's foot. Eden shouts to the group members that the 2 of them will handle it, and asks them to take the children and escape. The remaining 4 agree with his command. Thus the demon rises into the sky. Eden is thrown off by the force of the wind, then asks Daryl to bind him with the chains. He agrees to his student's request and throws them. Catching him and holding onto the dragon's tail, Eden explains that he's going to try to sever the demon's spinal cord, asking if Daryl can lift him high toward the spine, and Daryl says yes because he's done something similar before. The Paladin agrees and says he'll count to 3, goes to 2 and finishes on 3. Eden is launched upward and strikes the demon's spine with 1 blow, but he realizes it was too shallow due to the tough skin. It would be difficult to hit that spine with a regular iron sword, and he curses because due to the infiltration, he didn't get the sacred sword. The demon becomes enraged, asking how such insignificant beings dared challenge him, and if they thought he would just stand there, because he will tear those useless humans apart. He charges through the sky, completely changing direction, saying he needs many sacrifices. Daryl tells Eden to look. There's a city in the direction the creature is headed, and it seems he's moving toward the city, while Eden wonders if it's because of the sacrifices, wanting to know if this creature's intelligence was really that high before, and if it continues like this, hell will spread through the city, so he must stop it no matter what. If it continues like this, everyone in the city will lose their lives, so he orders Daryl to cut off the wings, but the hunter complains about the speed, saying they'd still crash into the city. Eden says they'll do everything possible to make it fall on the outskirts and minimize the damage, ordering the speed to be reduced as much as possible, because in the meantime, he'll do everything he can to stop its breathing. Counting on him, and the young man agrees, though the Paladin mentally complains about having to rely on trust. In the desert city of Serengal, the residents wonder what that was, as a massive white light was approaching, and they question if it was the descent of God, just like they had heard. But Eden shouts for everyone to move away, because that demon was approaching the area. Emitting a golden light from its mouth, the townspeople run, crying out for help, but they still wonder what that glow was. The demon calls Eden insolent for being inside its mouth, but the Paladin calls out to his partner, asking if he's ready. Daryl confirms while holding onto the demon's back, saying it took a bit longer because of the poison, but now everything was ready, and he throws his daggers. Several parts of the demon are slashed, forcing the creature down to the ground. Only a golden glow emanates from the center. The people of Serengal ask what that was, but an opening appears on the creature's arm, shining a blinding golden light. Eden simply cuts through it all with his sword, lifting it high after finishing the job, and saying that it's finally over. Explosions erupt in the tomb, while Celestine and Yuan defeat lesser demons, slashing through the demons in their path. Bandel and Syme prepare their magic to support the group, but Celestine is surrounded by 3 demons, thinking they managed to escape from the collapsing tomb. However, the summoned demons were coming to a halt. Yuan reflects that Celestine's sword was getting slower and slower, and everyone, including him, was exhausted, wondering what they should do now. But a scream is heard from behind them, as a golden light pierces the skies. Eden approaches on horseback, shouting for them to advance. Yuan gets excited at the sight of his lord, and thinks it wasn't over yet, because what matters is giving your all at the end. Eden yells for them to destroy the filthy demons, wiping them out without leaving a trace behind. In Tegain's office in the Holy Kingdom of Arkham, a messenger opens the door saying urgent news has arrived. The Archbishop apologizes and asks for a moment, but someone in the chair tells him to feel at ease. Outside, the messenger explains everything, and the Archbishop is in disbelief that Eden defeated the summoned creature, the great monster Manticore. Then he begins laughing, thinking that he only asked Eden to stop the summoning, and it was truly impressive. The messenger says that afterward, Eden also eliminated all the cult's followers and the remaining ones at the site. Therefore, the Holy Order and the Sacred Council's direct enforcement force were sent there to receive the captured criminals. Tegain asks what they're doing now, while Uriel begins to think, wondering if God would grant such immense power to someone who doesn't believe in him. Eden touches Yuan's shoulder and congratulates him on a job well done, but the guard says it wasn't enough, yet his master tells him not to be humble. Turning to Celestine and asking about the children, the knight says 6 lost their lives and 4 were poisoned by magic. They did everything possible to prevent further damage, but she still feels guilty for failing. Eden disagrees, saying they saved many lives, and she shouldn't blame herself, reflecting that the responsibility was his, because if he had stopped the summoning as Tegain ordered, the children would still be alive, and even if the result was the summoning occurring elsewhere, he has no right to judge human life, whether it's God or not, it's the same. But even so, the young man still feels guilty, saying that when the Holy Order arrives, she should handle the criminal's transfer, because he'll return first and is counting on her for the rest. But Celestine calls out to the Paladin. Eden tells her not to worry about the siblings, surprising the 2 of them in a good way. The knight raises her sword, honoring Eden, because even if it was for a short time, it was good to fight by his side, and she always prays for his well-being. Eden raises a cross on his finger and says they protect the weak and fulfill their oath, so they shouldn't lose their honorable and noble spirit, and asks if they intend to stay there, to which Bandel replies no. He plans to deliver the criminals and go to the Western Church. Eden says that wherever he goes, he should keep leading with hope as he just did, because he hopes that someday he'll be called Bishop Bandel, and that they'll meet again. On the way back, the Paladin reflects that even though he defeated Manticore, he still carries a weight in his heart for the loss of the children in the process. In a game where developments change at every moment, The time will come when he'll need to make unknown choices, and instead of blaming himself, he must trust in his decision. Because no one can predict the outcome, yet the responsibility for the lives lost is still his, as 6 more were added today. The horse stops following them. Sign looks at the paladin with admiration, thinking that the hero mentioned by her master really does seem to be the holy knight, and what he had said on that occasion. It seemed like the mission was well accomplished, but she couldn't understand what he was thinking. Daryl reflects that they're just half demons and nothing more than fleeting lives. Wondering if it's right to keep going like this, they should just run away. Sign complains that it hurts, but the older brother apologizes. Yuan stares at the two of them with no expression on his face, mocking that Daryl doesn't fit the mood and asks why he isn't getting worked up like he did with him, but the hunter wants to know why they're picking a fight. Eden interrupts the teasing, saying that if the 2 siblings joined the order, they would lose their lives, leaving Daryl and Sign scared by that. The hunter begs him to at least let his sister go, while the paladin turns around, saying he would help them live as humans. Daryl asks if he's being serious, while wondering what he's even talking about, because aside from that, he's from the Order, and they can't fully trust him. Eden says he's proven his skills enough, and besides, he owes them a debt, while the hidden reason is that he's a disciple of Kadak. So the paladin asks if that isn't reason enough to help them, telling them to hide until he comes back to get them. In the Holy Kingdom of Arkham, in Tigane's office, Eden responds that he's there to see the Archbishop because the mission was a failure, though he reflects that the outcome was a success, but he didn't follow orders, wondering whether he'll receive praise, envy, or a reprimand, and so he needs to adjust his attitude, hoping that Tigane is a perceptive superior. Tigane comments that in a short time, the heroic stories had already spread everywhere, and because of that, he lost his composure when forming a team and preparing for it. But that was the least of it, laughing, because the result seems to matter more than appearances or formality, and he offers his congratulations for the good work and encouragement. Eden feels relieved, because with this kind of attitude, he can act more freely, so he thanks him for speaking so positively about his independent decision. Tigane says it's important to have flexibility, and asks about the siblings, but the paladin replies that they are talented and he would keep an eye on them. The Archbishop agrees, since that was his decision, but he wants to know if the young man met the Inquisitor. Eden says that based on the schedule, he doesn't think it was possible this time. Tigane changes the subject, saying Eden is always so direct, so he'll be direct too. He and the Inquisitor decided to work together, and asks if Eden would like to help cut away the rotten parts of the Order. The Paladin replies that his duty is to eradicate demons, and he'll leave the heretics to the 2 of them. Tigane jokes about his solid determination, while thinking about his desirable talent, then touches the young man's shoulder, saying he respects his decision. And the saint was looking for him, so it would be good to meet her before leaving. But Eden reflects that it might be difficult now, since the first time he only said what he had to and left, and during the consecration he only received the blessing. He simply ignored it, and so did the saint, so he would leave it at that, because it's a mystery to understand a knight who doesn't believe in God, and it may be hard to respond, so it's better to avoid, saying that if not now, it will be complicated. Tigane tells him not to worry because Uriel is there now, asking them to have a good talk while he steps out to handle some matters. Uriel comments that it's difficult to talk with the Paladin, while Eden apologizes for the inconvenience caused. The saint denies it, saying he always seems worried, as if being pursued by something, but still, she senses discomfort coming from the young man, and if it's just an illusion, she apologizes, but Eden agrees that he was uncomfortable. Uriel tries to analyze the young man, thinking that might be the truth. She remembers people telling her all sorts of lies, and asks what the reason is, while wondering if he's not lying just to get something. Eden reflects that it's because of Uriel's eye of the mind. The saint says it must be difficult to be with someone who makes him feel that way, but the Paladin replies that it's not that he dislikes Uriel. She wonders what the reason for his discomfort is, if not that, and if he's referring to her. The Paladin asks if she's finished speaking, but she says no. She has another question. She asks him to answer while looking into her eyes. Does he serve the sun god Vachexer? Eden reflects that the moment arrives sooner than expected, and if it's Uriel, he can share a little. Clenching his gloved hand, he says no while thinking the conversation needs to happen. The Paladin says he does not serve him, and the girl repeats how earlier he said he spread the teachings of God, thinking that was the only truth that day. Eden agrees because the teachings of Vachexer are correct. Eradicate evil, help the weak, and do good, something he believes to be a universal principle. Uriel asks if it's not a contradiction to spread the word of a god while denying his existence, but the Paladin asks if she doesn't believe in the values of philosophers and other great figures. Since acting according to someone's teachings is a manifestation of one's own thoughts, it's an idea that turns into action. The girl tries to summarize what he said, but Eden explains that for him, the god Vachexer is just a philosopher or great figure, and he likely shares the same thoughts as the church. Uriel says everyone in the empire believes that God is omnipotent. Eden denies that, saying it's strange, because the world is full of suffering even with God present, and asks why he only watches. He looks at the girl and thinks she was reflecting on the same things he was, so he decides to leave after his conversation with the saint. Tigane asks if Uriel had a good conversation, but the girl sighs, saying he rushed off again. On the drawbridge at the entrance to the Holy Kingdom of Arkham, Eden reflects that now Uriel will stay quiet for a while. She doesn't know it, but their previous conversation revealed something extraordinary about the hidden truth of Vachexar. A truth so important it could shake the very foundation of the church. He doesn't want to deal with it lightly, but either way, it was good, because in the game, Uriel destroyed herself because of doubt. And with this conversation, she should feel more at peace. She was a necessary presence, and he truly wished he could tell her everything. But the player's knowledge is bound by a taboo that can only be revealed through Eden's own experiences. The identity of the demon the demonic church was trying to summon, the way to save Daryl and seeing, Uriel's insight, and so on. All of it would cause damage that could cost him his life. However, maybe due to the shift in the game's flow, dropping a few hints might be acceptable. Someone shouts that Eden is their old friend. It was the knight present at the ceremony, and Yuan greets his lord. The knight says he met the apprentice while passing by, and it's a pleasure to see Eden again, and the young man agrees, remembering Tyrone from the north. Tyrone apologizes for his previous lack of manners, saying Eden and his disciples are impressive, while Eden reflects on his change in attitude. Grabbing his disciple's bag, he replies that he was on his way north and would listen to his stories, but the knight asks if that's true, saying he must discourage it. This winter, beasts are descending in search of food, villages have been evacuated, and so has the religious order. So right now, the north is the greatest danger. Eden replies that in times like this, someone must keep watch in case the beasts decide to invade imperial territory. Thinking about how the north is about to become hell, he was just rushing to explore the ruins, but ended up receiving an unexpected gift, a high-grade gem that retains magical heat, something useful for the ruins expedition. Yuan sneezes in the middle of the cold. Eden comments that he handled the heat just fine, but this cold is hard to bear, and the boy replies it's his first time dealing with cold, since he grew up in the south, and now he understands why northerners get so excited when they talk about beautiful eyes. He asks if Eden is seeing that, because in the middle of the snowy pass, there's a cabin. Eden says they've reached the location marked on the map he gave to Daryl, but Yuan panics, telling his lord to wait, because in front of the cabin, Daryl was collapsed on the ground, unconscious, breathing heavily in the snow. While an old man with a sword asks who they are, Eden is surprised, while Yuan asks if it was him who left Daryl in that state. The old man just wants to know if they know the person lying on the ground, and Eden senses a powerful pressure coming from the elder. Yuan asks Lord Eden to prepare for battle, but the young man dismounts, saying it's not necessary, leaving his apprentice stunned by the response. Eden approaches as a paladin. He says Daryl is fine, and he was the one who sent the siblings here, and the elder asks if it was him. Daryl shouts that he was waiting for him, while Sign opens the door wanting to know if the paladin has indeed arrived. Yuan wonders what was happening there. In the cabin of the snowy mountains, the group gathers. The old man says that the paladin was named Eden, and his progress was so fast that it seemed unreal. Yuan asks for permission and inquires who that gentleman was, which Eden had forgotten to mention. That was one of the master swordsmen of the continent, Gillen Fenrir, and the old man says that he was just a reclusive lord on the borders. Yuan questions why Daryl had collapsed there just a little while ago, and Sign explains that it was his brother who lost a duel and ended up training in that manner. So since they arrived there, this became a routine. Gillen complains that he can barely do it, and Kedak spoiled the boy, questioning what wizards understand about these matters. Eden reflects that Gillen was, like him, a beacon of hope and says that he was useless, but those who inherited his swordsmanship have a great reputation. Gillen responds that they couldn't even be called students because they were clumsy. This man is an old friend of the great wizard Kedak and the guardian of the north. He is the wall that holds back the beasts and one of the monsters with the greatest combat strength. He slams his hand on the table, saying that he probably did not come all the way here just to chat, questioning why he sent the brothers to him. Eden thinks that he has finally reached the main point, and responds that it was to save them, because while he was in the order, he needed a place to hide the two. Gillen comments that he is a different kind of sacred knight, as he said he would let them live as humans, and Eden explains that the answer lies in an ancient site nearby. That is why he hid them in the old man's cabin near the ruins, and he laughs, saying that it was bold but not despicable, and even though he is not a bearer of a necklace, he is still someone extraordinary, but he asks him to be careful with arrogance. Eden walks away. The group complains about the cold and is saved thanks to an ignition stone, but they must not lower their guard because even the Empire struggles to deal with that place. Daryl says that they had a hard life up to that point and should not worry about the two, and Sign agrees because she is worried about Yuan. Her brother jokes that he must be trying as hard as he is, but Eden was focused on something, recalling Gillen telling him not to become arrogant in any way. The young man grits his teeth, thinking that it was true that he was weak, as he was growing rapidly, but considering that no one had completed the game, the difficulty was as high as if it were hell, since besides that, the ruin should not be easy, remembering that he had thanked Gillian for the advice. The old man asks the paladin to leave his disciple behind because otherwise he would lose his life there, asking if that was not one of his intentions when going there, since the brothers are necessary and possess good abilities, but the disciple is inferior in comparison, so that he would have the potential to be a true disciple. Eden asks Yuan to try hard as he leaves. Thus, he decides to depart with the group using the fragment, which emanates in the sky and Eden thinks that he cannot settle or stop there since he must move forward towards his objectives and thus survive this hell. The golden light of the necklace shatters in the sky. Daryl comments that beyond that point, there was a dangerous frozen terrain called the Field of Eternal Snow. And he says that the ignition stone was very conspicuous, making it dangerous, but Eden says that he would eventually end up encountering enemies at some point, and it was riskier to be cold. Suddenly, a snowstorm hits the advancing group. Something moves toward the group, leaving Eden apprehensive. He takes the lead, saying that they are demi-humans, and orders Daryl to assess the situation. The hunter reflects on the spot where he saw the dagger's reaction, fragmenting as it collided with something, and falling to the ground shortly thereafter. The knife heads toward Eden along with a beast, and the paladin reflects that the demi-human's weak point is at the nape, thus advancing toward him, but the beast simply evades the strike. Eden notices the scratch on his armor and says that it will not be an easy enemy, because thanks to the snowstorm, his vision was compromised. Sign says that they can resolve this with the ignition crystal, and the young man agrees with her. The girl prepares a spell with the intention of lasting as long as possible, thus causing an explosion in the indicated area. A figure appears in front of the three. The beast approaches and says that they have a curious combination, a sacred knight and two creatures that exude a repulsive smell, and Eden reflects that it is of the snow leopard race. Eden reflects that she smelled a demon, and they must eliminate her before she continues speaking, telling Daryl to focus on the attack. Thus, the paladin charges at the creature with full force. He drives his sword into the ground as she dodges, and Daryl creeps behind, thinking the Lord has drawn her attention. He prepares to throw his daggers, striking the leopard in the back. She screams that those bastards were rushing the Reaper with their mischief, commenting that if that's what they wanted, she would give it to them, starting with the paladin. Daryl becomes frightened about what might have happened to his lord, but something falls toward the ground, heading into a dark cave. The leopard calls him a coward hiding behind armor, for she would make him regret ever getting involved. But Eden suddenly wakes up, thinking about someone else who said the same thing she did, so he stays silent in place, experiencing strange memories from his past. The leopard mocks that he has surrendered to the overwhelming difference in power, but starts bleeding from her mouth. Eden had pierced her heart with his sword. The leopard realizes she never stood a chance, just as she is grabbed by the neck, and Eden questions how she dares to utter the same words as that man, for he would make sure she never opens that mouth again, breaking her neck against the ground. But she escapes the blow, charging toward the young man once more, asking how he dares to underestimate her power, striking Eden on the side of his ribs. The paladin becomes enraged, saying that species can't understand words, and it's all in vain, for they only bring back repulsive memories. Ripping off the snow leopard's tail, she asks when that happened, but Eden decides to send her to hell, thinking that for these monsters, mercy is a luxury. Daryl and Sign go after the Lord, finding only bloodstains on the ground, and at the end of the path, Eden stands in front of the leopard's body. He asks if they finally arrived, for it was just in time, and they must remember that demi-humans hate humans, and the elimination must be definitive, where misplaced compassion can ruin everything. Eden announces they would depart immediately, but Sign points out his bleeding, for even if he's a monster, that wound was serious, and she asks to treat him first. Though he wasn't wrong about it, now that the blizzard has weakened, they should return to Gillen's home and tend to their wounds. Eden refuses, saying it would heal quickly, showing that it was already scared over. The girl and her brother are in disbelief and joke that he truly was chosen by God. Eden says it's a bit of that, while thinking it's thanks to high stats. But in any case, since the cold has calmed down, they need to move quickly. And if they appear in a group, it'll be dangerous, for they might already be nearby. But Daryl questions if snow leopards aren't a solitary species. The paladin remains silent in response, but says there are exceptions, as it doesn't make sense that snow leopards came down that far. They are usually apex predators in the depths of the eternal tundra, and even during winter, are not a species that migrates south. Eden looks to the sky thoughtfully, wondering if there was an anomaly up there, but for now, he must focus on what's in front of him. Sign looks at the quiet forest, but Eden places a hand on her head. The girl is confused and asks why all of a sudden, but the paladin says there are many people who care about her, and in any situation, she must remember that unconditionally. Sign agrees with the paladin's words, so they depart for time was running out and they must hurry, but he murmurs that the girl had fallen behind. The blizzard keeps falling. Someone follows the group's trail, watching from afar, but Eden notices, wondering what kind of signal that was. The hooded figure starts moving. Then the paladin thinks it's hail, and that it had become sensitive. Daryl asks why it seems to be falling only on him, but Eden replies that God didn't have much to do, making the demon cough up blood. He apologizes but says the paladin says worrying things, and Eden tells him to drop it and focus on their surroundings, while Sign remains quiet and hesitant, thinking she felt disgusted by it, and suddenly she feels sickened by herself, wondering how that happened, recalling the leopard's words about the siblings exuding a repulsive scent, wondering if her brother was truly okay. Since the strange combination the feline mentioned, she wants to know if it was about their parents, her master, and her sin, and even remembering Eden's words, that if they went to the order, they would lose their lives. He thinks it can't be, because of that sin that was mentioned. Eden reflects that she was awakening as they approached the ruins, and Kadak's magic was dissipating. However, the girl needed to recognize her true nature to break free from her fate. Now Sign must feel like the entire known world was collapsing in front of her. Daryl shouts, trying to help his sister, but Eden stops him because they were close to the ruins and she was becoming aware. And if they stayed any longer, everyone would be in danger, so he must take her even if he has to carry her. The hooded person keeps watching the group from afar and remains silent, leaving the area in a flash of blue flight. Eden feels something strange at his feet, wondering if this vibration could be coming from a group of demi-humans, and cursing since they were so close. He orders Daryl to ignore them and run to the end of that light, but the brother explains that Sign's condition is serious, leaving the Paladin stunned that she had a seizure so suddenly. The girl's skin starts to grow scales. She writhes in pain while crying. The group of demi-humans advances, and Eden reflects on how close they were, but something else was approaching too. The Paladin wonders what else there was besides the leopards. However, that hooded person jumps high into the air, landing behind the snow leopards. Eden thinks that pressure was not something ordinary and could be revealed, but the being simply emanates its presence behind the beasts. He walks among the creatures. Eden thinks it's a damn mess, because the snow leopard pack was already dangerous, and now they'd have to deal with this monster too, wondering what they should do, while the creature asks everyone to calm down, since now was not the time for this. Eden reflects that he didn't seem like a member of the snow leopard tribe, and Daryl asks if they should retreat, but the Paladin says no, as he would observe. The leopards complain about fleeing from a human, but the man explains that unlike the time when humans used to hunt demi-humans, now only one member was lost, since besides that he doesn't seem easy to deal with, and although the situation is favorable, they suffered great damage, asking if the man would waste energy unnecessarily at such an important time. One leopard simply sighs at him, saying he was lucky, and Eden reflects that he had no chance, since this shift happened at the upper part of the Field of Eternal Snow, and he wants to learn more about it before the man leaves, but for now, he has no choice but to let him go. The beast says they must choose practical results over unnecessary battles, because he needs to prepare for the future, and it's a farewell for those humans. Daryl asks who that guy was exactly, but Eden says he's someone who leads the Leopard clan, and in the region of the Perpetual Snow Mountain, many tribes live, but they have different gods and ideologies, and so even among demi-humans, it's normal for different tribes to see each other as enemies. However, there are times when a Beast King arises to unite the tribes through strength. The demi-humans gather under the Beast King and can display incredible power, because from what he's seeing, a war may be about to break out, while reflecting on how humans hunted and enslaved demi-humans. So the hatred was understandable, but the timing wasn't right. The birth of the Beast King happens much later in the game, and their side's preparation was insufficient because the difficulty of the Beast King was extremely high, to the point that most players quit the game at that stage. Daryl asks if that guy was the Beast King, and Eden says he'll investigate later. So they must enter the ruin now, and they move toward the golden light, speaking to Elohimdirk that his master commands the use of sacred power, revealing the entrance by breaking the seal of the ruin. Daryl covers his face so as not to be blinded by the light, but a nice staircase appears in front of them. A lock with 8 symbols stands before Eden, and he places a gem in its center, creating a rune in front of him. Someone yells, asking who dares to profane the palace of the great hero. The ruins of eternal ice in the sanctuary that hides the great hero Arkan. Daryl says that this is the place, but Eden confirms they've arrived and tells everyone not to let their guard down. The great hero led the demi-human war to victory, and asks if he is the one chosen by the necklace, because he is young and seems qualified, wanting to know his name. Eden introduces himself while thinking it might come off as presumptuous. Arhan replies that he's being rude because he doesn't care about that, and although people call him a great hero, he was more like a mere butcher. The Paladin expresses his desire for a challenge and says many words aren't necessary, but the hero suggests it must be about the artifact. He asks if Eden brought a half-demon out of pity, and if so, it would be pointless. Eden replies that he can think whatever he wants, because he's sure they'll succeed, and Arhan questions why he brought the others. The Paladin had promised to cleanse the black blood and give the girl a human life, just like the hero once did for her. Arhan snaps his fingers, calling him a bold boy, creating a battlefield of sand, and summoning hundreds of demons before them, asking them to begin the trial, reminding them that defeat there is tied to real life, wondering why he was in a place like that. If he wants to live, he must fight, and save the girl to win the artifact. Crosses begin to rise from the ground. Daryl asks how the hero dares to touch Sign, even while being a great hero, but Eden tells him not to get emotional, and to focus on the battle, because if they win this fight, they'll obtain an artifact that will change both his and Sign's fate. He reflects that when he placed the jewel on the plaque, he saw information related to the artifact, so that restriction had been lifted. And with that information, they were ready to fight with all their strength. Daryl begins to transform with scales, becoming a half-blooded demonic beast. Eden reflects that the Proclaimer of Destruction reacts to demonic blood mixed with the siblings, and now he doesn't have to worry as much, because if not for Sign, he would have had to endure that place for another 5 years, but now he managed to reduce the time spent. The girl cries while the Paladin charges forward. His skill boosts his stats even more, and Eden reflects that it was time to settle this debt. The urge to destroy overflowed, and he felt like he could devour them all, slicing through every demon in his path, severing the monsters' heads. Eden grins madly as he does it. Arhan watches everything from atop a rock. The Paladin charges at the demon using his divine power, but the hero only thinks to himself that he realized Eden was impressive, but also terrifying. And as he wields his sword, he becomes faster and more precise, and instead of tiring, he grows stronger by the minute, and is even enjoying it. Back then, he had been powerless, wondering where someone like this had come from. Eden comments that even ordinary enemies are fun to defeat, and thanks to that, his stats were improving significantly. Even his partner was doing well, and it was time for that thing to appear. Then the ground begins to shake, splitting open a chasm beneath Eden. He says that it finally showed up. Arhan stares silently, while hundreds of mouths emerge from the ground, and Eden shields himself with divine power, saying this is a true challenge worthy of being called a trial. The great hero Arhan was someone who had always achieved victory in the demon war. However, the demons captured Arhan's beloved to try to subjugate him. But of course, the man tried to save her. Because his love was a half-demon, no one came to her rescue, and he fought alone. In the end, Arhan was defeated, and his beloved lost her life. But filled with resentment, he imprisoned Brittany, the demon, inside barriers along with his own thoughts. After that, he followed his beloved, meeting a miserable end, but in truth, Arhan's power was to seal a portion of real space-time, and it was a one-time ability that traded his life. That's why all those demons on the battlefield were real. Arhan says it was fair, and that was just a taste. He wonders how long the boy could last, and he should give it his best, but Eden tells him to come already, because he's tired of hunting small prey, since his power has grown so much. He then says it's starting to get fun, facing Brittany, the demon of appetite. Sign thinks that it felt right, because it had been like that for a long time, with unfamiliar looks of contempt. Her older brother seemed strange, like he had no choice but to go to the church, and all of it was because they were half demons, something created to induce despair. Daryl shouts, asking if Sign can hear him. The girl cries because her brother was right, and they can't change their fate. But her brother says he's wrong again, because Eden said he could give them a human life, and Sign should regain her senses. The girl continues crying as she thinks. Eden climbs onto the serpent's forehead and says that Daryl has become a little eloquent, because that monster was the final test for the siblings, as it was an ignorant demon that devoured others to regenerate infinitely. Because of that, it guards the altar and feeds the devil, being someone difficult to deal with alone. But if one person can take care of Brittany, the other can destroy the altar. So they advance against the demon. One of Eden's arms is grabbed by a mouth, but he rips it free using his sword. Daryl asks if, by just dealing with that demon, his sister could be free. Eden looks at him with a smile, asking how long he's going to keep just confirming things. Then he charges at the creature with his sword and knocks its mouth to the ground. Eden says that the feeling of cutting that was immensely unpleasant, but the mouth begins to move on the ground, with others emerging as he notices that he tried to cut it with divine power, but it was no use. So he warns Direct that he's going to throw him toward the altar, and his ally should clear the surroundings. The serpent roars loudly. Eden charges into the demon's mouth, saying he's going to use its regenerative power against it to absorb and stay deep within its body. Its tremendous regenerative power would serve as an anchor for him. Therefore, he could remove it from the altar just by throwing it outside. Inside the belly, Eden tries to orient himself, but grabs another weapon, saying it would be fitting, then strikes the inner walls of the creature's stomach. He says it was good, as he managed to capture it properly, and throws it far from the altar, tearing through the creature's entire wall and piercing it with his rescue rope. Eden pulls himself out using the rope. Daryl strikes the creature and says he'll help his friend. The Paladin pulls the rope with all his strength, groaning in pain as he tries, but the mouths begin to merge, becoming an extremely tight mass. Eden says he'll stop it, so Daryl should take care of the altar. And so the serpent says it's moving, for they must take this attack from its body. The altar begins to break, and even the seal of that world is damaged. The serpent lifts its head, while the mouths go into agony, self-destructing in that very moment. Eden tells him to save Sign and get out of there, while thinking he can't waste his last chance to gain experience. Arham watches it all from above, seeing Eden cut down every remaining mouth in the area. He thinks that if it doesn't have enough food, the demon would eat its own body, and that's exactly what it begins to do, self-destructing, while the young man gains massive experience from the demon's fall. The hero approaches him, saying that by identifying all of Brittany's weaknesses at once, and wondering how long he can endure this demonic barrier, since even he failed this time. But he was breaking free from the curse created by his madness, and was finally liberated. However, Eden calls for his attention, telling him to bring that to him. In Jillin's snowy mountain cabin, Yuan collapses to the ground again. Jilin says there's a long road ahead, and he must practice if he wants to be useful, while the boy wonders why he was like this, clenching his hand into the snow and wondering why it was so hard. But someone says he was working hard for nothing. Yuan steps back, wondering if someone else was there, and questions who the hooded figure is, but he calls Yuan Gillen's disciple, asking to personally show him how he should move, and then points a sword at the boy. Yuan continues training alongside Callan. The old man asks if he had an epiphany about something yesterday because his skills had improved, wondering if it was because he fell into the snow and was thinking about that now. Yuwon tries to dodge the question, saying he didn't really understand because it was like someone had told him, and if it had been a dream, asking if Jilin has disciples living nearby, but the old man denies it, saying Yuwon may have received enlightenment through his dream. The boy reflects that it was too vivid to be just a dream, but his master decides to increase the intensity of the training based on his growth. In the ruins of the ancient blizzard inside the sanctuary dedicated to the great hero Arhan, Eden says he's going to resolve the demonic blood flowing through the siblings' bodies, because Ochexer said that due to their ancestors' sins, they must be punished. Future generations would be wounded, but Eden says that was all, asking why he was making it so complicated since the sins had already been forgiven, and the siblings were now eligible. Daryl thinks that he is a noble hero dedicated to God, remembering that he had spoken poorly of the novice Paladin before, wondering where on earth one is supposed to trust and entrust their life to him, for above all, his abilities were beyond the rumors, and since they were Paladins, there was no way to leave them alone. However, that last part, he wonders if now it's all useless, because Eden is not a typical Paladin, and he's never seen him pray before. In fact, he speaks more blasphemies than anything lately, and he was even good to half-demons like him. But Eden draws the older one's attention, telling him not to stand around and to give a bit of his blood. Daryl touches his finger to the artifact's leaf, saying now it was Sign's turn and she shouldn't put in too much, because it wasn't as scary as it seemed, smiling at his sister from the corner of his mouth. Eden says that was the end of the ritual. Then he releases the paper into the air, which begins turning into several letters. They swirl around Daryl's body, along with his sister, who also becomes covered in letters. Eden simply watches it all. As the demonic energy leaves the bodies of the two, he says that God has officially forgiven them and let it pass, and now they would prove their innocence to the church, congratulating them for now being considered human. Daryl begins to tremble, and Sign does the same, crying. The girl says she thought she knew everything, but they were half demons, their master had abandoned them, and even her older brother had hidden his abilities. Yet a holy knight who hates demons saved them, and they could never repay such kindness, feeling truly grateful. Eden asks the little girl to calm down, and she agrees, but it wasn't an order from the man. He feels a bit embarrassed. He touches the girl's head and says that, in the first place, due to Sign's talent, this decision left him with no other choice, but it's okay to make exceptions sometimes. Daryl calls out Eden's name, kneeling and thanking him deeply. Eden asks him not to do that because it's uncomfortable. However, the young man says he's not an animal who can make distinctions and doesn't know about God because he was never taught, but he knows he must repay a favor, so he will dedicate his entire life to his Lord, asking Eden to accept it. The young man thinks it's unexpected and wonders what he should do, since as a holy knight, he has the authority to grant honors, so he grabs the knife, telling Daryl to leave that part to him, because he has to admit that a formal denomination won't be easy to accept, and the hunter gets excited, saying it would be completely inappropriate, but he still has a lot of potential, and he's heard many things about a genius anyway, so he'll grow tremendously. Eden tells him to work hard, and the young man celebrates, thanking him, but he asks Sign not to think she's in his debt, because he's the one who owes her, and therefore she must decide for herself. She shouts that her teacher said she'd become an archmage in the future, and she's not bragging at all, but Eden offers a recommendation to the Magic Academy. The girl refuses because her master said they had nothing to teach there, and she also wants to follow the Paladin. Eden thinks that with this level of talent, it would be a great help if they worked together, so he turns around saying they would do just that, noticing something strange in Arhan. The young man asks what he's doing, and the hero replies that if he had succeeded, he might be laughing with his beloved the same way. However, the artifact had originally been obtained through blood, sweat, and tears for her, yet Eden disagrees, saying he wasn't asking, and it wasn't just idle talk. They were also discussing going back to rest. Arhan speaks of not having been assigned the task of delivering this, and Eden's audacity reaches the heavens, even if he passed just one trial. Eden says that thanks to that, he and his beloved can be together, so the hero should be happy. The hero mocks that as ridiculous because the young man has never even been in love before, making Eden tremble. The young man walks past the hero and Arhan teases him for already missing him, but now with all the hatred that would consume everything before his heart. For that reason alone, he must have something to do as well. Then Arhan snaps his fingers, telling them not to talk there any longer. A spear and a chest appear, emanating an aura. The Gargantua sword, made from the bones of the ancient king of Baxo, was one of the great artifacts that allows the summoning of any era at any place. It was far too precious to give to someone unrefined like him, so he gives it to the siblings. Eden reflects that the spear was a fine treasure, but there was something good inside that jeweled box too. The box emits a golden glow when opened, revealing an egg inside. Arhan jokes that the Paladin is good at recognizing valuable things, because this was a divine egg, from which could hatch a unicorn or a celestial horse, a Pegasus, that soars through the skies and should crack once they surpass the order and release the seal. Eden reflects that, just like Arhan said, usually this divine beast egg hatches a unicorn or celestial horse, but there's only a small chance something like that will be born when the egg cracks. Outside the ruin, Jilin greets the young man for returning. Alongside a strange guy, unable to identify the animal that came from the egg. He says he's lived a long life, but never thought the day would come when he'd be surprised by someone else's accomplishments. Wondering what exactly happened in the ruins, with a horned Pegasus now accompanying Eden. A few hours earlier, the egg had cracked and out came an alicorn, the strongest mystical creature without any known weaknesses. The unicorn purifies demonic energy, but only when following virgins, while the Pegasus can fly, but consumes a lot of divine power. But the alicorn is a mutant that combines both their strengths, as it can purify demonic energy and fly without any restriction. Arhan asks if the young man is truly chosen by the gods. Daryl approaches the creature, saying it's a fascinating being and asks to pet it. But the alicorn bites him, making his hand bleed, so Arhan explains that no one should touch a magical creature except for its master. The young man gets irritated, saying it was harsh and asking if the weak hero had his brain destroyed after 200 years, and Arhan retorts that Daryl has never read the scriptures. Eden tells them both to stop and asks if he could request one more favor from Arhan, wanting that which the hero possesses. Arhan questions how much he knows, since it's a taboo to reveal it, and if Eden doubts him, he'll prove it's real, wanting to know if he swears by Vichexa. Eden refuses, saying he doesn't swear. Arhan is surprised, as it seems Eden knows something. The Paladin says that it's a worthless item to the hero now, and Arhan implies it's not something to be given as a gift, so Eden asks what he wants in return. He tosses something into the Paladin's hand, which he catches easily, handing him a metal orb, telling him that once he reaches his goal, not to forget about him. Eden asks if that's all, and Arhan simply says he was curious about his potential. The Paladin reflects that this is an item that can change the flow of the future, and he didn't expect to receive it as a gift, thanking the old hero for it. He simply walks toward the portal, saying that's enough, and the group should lead now. Besides that, Sign would become a great mage in the future, and when she reaches that level, she should construct a body to contain her consciousness, as he may lend her his strength if she needs it. At home, Jilin prepares bread and soup for the guest. Eden says he had a good experience in the ruins, while Sign jokes that Yuan still looks unconscious. Jilin says he did the same as Eden, and that he's truly talented, while Sign teases that her grandfather is the best. The old man says that with strong determination, he taught him even more, and Eden agrees since Yuan seemed to have learned a lot. But he had something urgent to ask the old man. On the way to the ruins, he encountered a group of snow leopards. It's an eternal field of snow, but it's currently nearby. He asks the old man to escape that dangerous situation, and Jilin questions whether the snow leopards truly left their habitat. Eden says it seemed that a stronger entity was taking over the deeper areas, and the snow leopards were ordered to return by just one man. He believes this man is the Beast King, leaving Gillen in disbelief, because even his speculation, nothing involving a Beast King should be ignored, so he says he'll report it separately to the Order. And the Elder must be cautious about all this. Gillen understands. Time passes as they talk, while the siblings notice the atmosphere has become much heavier, but they finally notice that their alicorn has awakened. The creature moves its head gracefully, opening its eyes and becoming lively. Jilin jokes that it really does seem full of energy, but Daryl complains that it's temperamental, since his hand still hurts, and the Elder calls him a fool for touching a mythical beast. He asks if they have anything to feed the creature, since it eats demonic energy and demon corpses. Daryl stands up excitedly, asking to leave it to him, the demon hunter, since he had collected many remains to sell, exciting the unicorn, though that was far from useless and actually very valuable. The unicorn charges toward the food, leaving Daryl unconscious for placing such things on the table while eating. Sign asks if the Paladin gave a name to the alicorn, but he denies it, wondering if the little girl wants to choose a name. She gets excited and asks if she can really do that, and Eden confirms, so she suggests the name Yup. Eden asks if it's an abbreviation, but Jilin explains that it symbolizes nobility in runic language, and the girl agrees, saying it means something like pure white. The Paladin repeats the unicorn's name, saying that from now on, its name is Yup. Gillen mentions that the information he obtained today would be useful for Yup, since in the desert region, particularly at the Empire's borders, there's a demon infestation, a place that turned into a human farm, and an idiot named Tyrone tried to exterminate them, but lost all his troops and ran away, calling Eden by name, and asking if he would like to go there. Eden tells Yup that he's going to have a feast. Then the group begins moving through the snowy mountains, arriving in the desert region in the Viscount's territory. Soldiers pray for God to watch over them, but a demonic laugh is heard. It's a group of demons chasing the two. One of the men asks how they already found them. The demons ask if they thought they could win with such running skills, wondering if there's anything to eat there, or if they can skin him alive in front of everyone, because ripping off his limbs also sounds good. The humans try to plead for mercy, but the demon refuses, saying that's not right, because humans hate pain more than death, so he'll make them beg to be sent to hell, beheading both humans. The demon is struck by a golden light, falling to the ground while Eden rides his horse. The demons notice he looks like another paladin based on his presence. Eden finds it disgusting and says he finally found them, ordering Yuan and Daryl to kill them all without exception. The demon hunter traps one with his keychain, while Yuan charges in with his sword and cuts off their heads. The demons can only think of escaping, but Eden grabs one by the neck, asking what he's doing, since humans hate pain more than death. He starts to press into the demon's skin, saying he wondered how demons feel about that, since they should experience it at least once, and whether he shouldn't be the one kneeling and begging now. The demons lie lifeless on the ground. Eden stands in front of one kneeling. Then he asks if the two humans were village sentries who had come to ask for help, and they confirm. The paladin approaches the demon and says it's his turn now, wanting to know the name of his master, but the demon says there's a taboo about that. Eden repeats the word taboo and wonders if he's trying to force that idea on others. However, one of the guards shouts to the paladin that the leader commanding the village is a vampire named Bruni. The demon gets angry and calls him a bastard, asking how he could be so insolent. But Eden gets even more furious, asking if the demon doesn't know how to shut up, because he needs to spill all the information about his lord's castle. Yuan raises his hand, asking Eden to wait, since he's learned interrogation techniques from the Inquisitor, and asks if he can take care of them. Eden asks about that, and the young man nods, but the paladin is doubtful because of his innocent face, telling him to go ahead. But Yuan calls Daryl to come along. The demon hunter grabs one of the monsters by the neck and says they should see what an ability is capable of. Yuan says there are no ranks for new recruits, and Daryl agrees. Eden turns to the soldiers and asks if they've encountered a pureblood. The guard says yes, he sees him every day, but he appears in different forms each time, sometimes as a woman, sometimes as a man, but occasionally he transforms into a great bat that flies around the city. Eden finds it strange, since purebloods shouldn't be able to enter the continent thanks to the barrier. So maybe he's not a pureblood, but a demon whose power became equivalent to one after centuries of feeding on human blood. Wondering about the mutant demon, one that can create vampire servants and expand its power across the continent, making it dangerous, calling Tyrone a fool for not reporting it and just running away. Eden asks about the current situation, and the guard says there are dozens of vampires, all controlled by the pureblood. Recently, they've started capturing and imprisoning other residents, and many people are suffering, being forced to reproduce, having their blood drained, and being eaten. But they weren't running far, they were actually seeking help from the church, and Eden agrees, saying he's already seen enough. He tells them they don't need to worry anymore, and one of the guards says that a paladin recently visited there. Along with a large group, they were completely defeated, and Eden says he already knows, so they shouldn't be concerned. Yuan approaches, saying he's ready, since the demon had spit out all the information, and Daryl looks shaken by what he saw. Yuan says he kept him alive for now and asks what they should do, but Eden cuts off the demon's head since they no longer need him. He reminds them both that they're not just demons, they were once human, and by choice, drank blood and abandoned their humanity. They committed horrible sins of their own free will, so salvation and purification were impossible. He asks if Yuan found a secret infiltration route, and the boy confirms, saying they have a tunnel prepared for emergencies, and they can use it to spy on what's happening there. Eden praises him for a job well done and for learning so quickly. Yuan says it's his duty, and Daryl jokes that he didn't expect him to imitate his lord, that it's hilarious. Eden reflects on how close they'd grown to each other. Then Daryl asks what they should do, and the paladin says they'll block the escape routes with a barrier and deal with all the demons at once. But both turn when their attention is called, as Sign approaches on horseback with Yoop, and Eden says the girl has finally arrived, and they need her barriers. But he'll explain in more detail on the way, and the little girl asks to leave it to her. Eden orders the guards to alert them when the demon appears, and they understand. Then Yoop climbs onto the paladin's shoulder, and he praises him for doing well, saying he'll eat until he's full soon. A blue light emanates from the area. At the Viscount's estate, inside the mutant village, demons approach, complaining that the lazy humans move too slowly. Marching in a line outside the house, the people accept that God has truly abandoned them. Two people hide in the darkness of that house. Yuan asks if all those people will have their blood drained, and Daryl adds that some even lost their lives there. Sane says it's an unforgivable act, and Eden agrees, saying it made his blood boil, deciding the infiltration mission will begin. A guard approaches, saying their leader will appear once everyone is inside, and Eden asks him to notify them when he shows himself. Stepping into the wooden house, the door shuts behind them. People cry inside the house, but a demon tells everyone to shut their mouths. Eden clenches his fist tightly, grinding his teeth, but a demon tells everyone to prepare for a head count. The paladin whispers that it didn't seem like that man, and the guard replies that the boss should appear soon. A person in front of Eden is told to step forward. Then the demon yanks his hair, but the man begs to be spared. The creature complains that when humans are ordered out, they should obey their masters, asking how mere prey dares resist, and kicks him in the head, knocking the man out. The demons call the people insolent, saying it seems they need to be beaten to regain awareness of what's happening. They begin to strike the humans present in the house. Eden becomes more enraged than ever by what he's witnessing, thinking he should wait a little longer for the demon to appear, but one of the demons approaches, asking if there were more of them. Then one of them turns and says they need to extract 2 today, and his partner complains the number has grown, telling him to move aside so he can count again, approaching the 2 in the count. He wonders why there's such a large human. Eden curses him in his thoughts, telling him to go away and not bother them, but the demon touches his face, asking about him. One of the demons finally announces the arrival of Lord Bruni, and everyone kneels to greet him. Eden sees a demon and wonders if it's really him, wanting to know if it's the same Bruni he remembers. One of the guards shouts that it is, and Eden becomes furious, saying he'll tear the demon apart. Then he tells all the humans to get out and orders Scene to start forming the barrier. A barrier envelops the entire Viscount's house, destroying even parts of the outside, wrecking a large portion of the town as well. A demon loses its head. People begin to scream among the debris, saying there's someone up there, as Eden removes his hood and reveals his paladin armor. People say that with that golden light, there could only be one. Then one of the guards leads everyone down that path, telling them to escape, while a demon writhes in pain on the ground, asking how they dared to do this. But he's cut down before he can do anything, because Yuwon explains that the vampires can't cross the barrier on the other side, and they must escape quickly. The guard leads the people along the path beyond the barrier. One of the civilians asks if the paladin will be okay, because the last time a paladin came and ran away, they suffered greatly. But the soldier tells them to believe in him. Another blast of destruction falls behind the barrier. The guard and civilians turn to look, and he says that Eden is different from the paladin who came and fled last time. The man thinks it's what you'd expect from Gargantua, since its power is immense, and just one swing with divine energy caused that much damage. Then he shouts for Yuwon and Durl to hold off the remaining enemies and protect Sign during the evacuation. Both agree to their leader's order. Meanwhile, Eden is thinking that the mutant bastard should come out, since he was hiding, and tells him to show himself, spotting something strange in the sky. The winged monster was flying below the barrier, waiting to strike. Bruni asks how he dared to destroy his nest. Because that filthy human should prepare himself, his blood would dissolve his body into nothing, releasing something from his chest. Eden's eye glows gold as the energy approaches him, but the young man simply deflects it with his spear and calls it rude, spinning his spear and blocking the energy from getting closer. A trace of it hits his shoulder. Eden wonders if his armor is melting. The bat charges toward the man, saying he had underestimated him, but Eden prepares to resist with his spear as it gets closer, landing a kick to the creature's chest, then grabbing its foot and slamming the demon into the ground right after, causing it to bleed from the damage. Eden becomes more enraged, twisting the creature's head by slamming it repeatedly into the ground. Blood sprays upward. Bruni groans in pain, his face completely disfigured. Yuwon and Durl are stunned by the amount of damage inflicted. Yuk drinks the creature's blood, and Eden thinks he must not stop until the body is reduced to dust. Mutants use hallucinations, transformations, and lure people in to defeat humans, and he could fall for it too. He slams Bruni into the ground one last time and extends his hand. Yuk continues to drink the blood, while Eden stores the light spear on his back, thinking maybe it was because he improved, since it turned out easier than he expected and the trouble at the ruins was worth it. The vampire cleanup was nearly done, and he wonders where Yuwon is, as Daryl is still there fighting. Eden notices that he's performing better than expected, but it's clear he's extremely exhausted, wondering if he should see how far he can go, and asks Cyan to release the barrier now, because she must have used a lot of energy summoning a barrier that only traps demons. It was well done, but Cyan jokes that she just stayed focused on the barrier, asking about the others, and Eden says he will check. Yuwon finishes off another demon, and one of them tells the human to clear the way quickly, because he needs to reach Lord Bruni. The knight holds his sword and trembles. However, the demon asks if he doesn't want to live and get out of the way, but Yuwon is thinking. Since Jilin told him to focus and let go of all his frustrations, learning to push his aura to the limit and slice even stone with a fingernail. He must feel the aura directly to understand it, so Yuwon decides that just for a moment, he'll channel his aura through his body and feel it to swing the sword, effortlessly slicing off the demon's head. The demon's head falls beside Eden, as the boy collapses to the ground, saying that just 2 demons pushed him to this state, and he needs to train much harder. Eden reflects that Yuwon, who once trembled when near death, now could defeat 2 enhanced demons, and he sees potential in him as Daryl approaches saying he dealt with the rest. Eden agrees, saying it was time to finish this, and stomps on one of the demon's heads, because he must confirm the extermination and asks if Yup wants the remaining bodies. He pulls his sword out of one of the demons, and Daryl removes his dagger, but Eden grabs the spear. The paladin feels a vibration in his head, saying now it was the demon's turn, shaking in fear after discovering its weakness. Eden wonders how that creature was even still alive, because he transferred his body before losing his life, yet cursed himself for falling into that trick. He then opened his eyes. He saw an explosion in front of him, and wondered what it was, as it was an illusion created by a mutant. But someone called out to Eden. It was a female kitsune approaching, and she said it had been a while since she last saw him, because she missed Eden, touching his face and asking if he had released his anger. Eden reached out his hand to the girl, then grabbed her neck. He said it would be better for her to ask to lose her life, breaking the illusion of the mutant demon. Eden told Yuwon and Daryl to prepare for the interrogation. Rooney suffered as he was being forced. Eden sat in front of him, tied up, and asked if he remembered the paladin who had just run away. The demon shouted that he wouldn't open his mouth just because he was suffering like this, and thought that, for a brief moment, he managed to trap this man in memories and emotions, so he knew he desired power, offering it to him. If he drank his blood and became his servant, he would gain far more power. Eden said he liked that, because he wasn't afraid of pain but of losing life itself, and reflected that in a situation like this, he was thinking about survival. The vampire's power was linked to the human's desires, and his subordinates seemed surprised. He saved his life by stealing the body of a vampire from his own family, and asked what that meant. Rooney asked if his body feared death, and Eden said this was his last chance to speak about the Paladin and thus spare his life. The demon mocked that the boy was wrong, for he had lived for an eternity and had no regrets, but humans have limited lives. He would give eternal life to Eden, but the boy slapped the demon's face, saying the demon didn't understand what he was doing. He said he would let him live, he answered, not if he offered his blood to a paladin, thinking it would be eternal slavery, stabbing the dagger into the demon, because if he didn't open his mouth, he would become the next skull. The vampire said he was a piece of shit and asked if he would swear to his god to save his life. Eden swore in the name of the god Vachexer that if he opened his mouth, he would save his life. The demon confessed he had an inferiority complex about his talent and didn't drink it, but separately gave him the chance to choose. And the boy reflected that he knew how these demons worked through hallucinations and had to confirm the desires and seduce people. Because Tyrone received the blood of a vampire, it clearly meant he was in conflict. Eden drove the sword into the demon's skull, saying that if he drank his blood, he would become a member of his family and see it up close, because that was the end for this guy and he knew nothing else. So Eden turned around, accepting it. Rooney asked if he was really going to save his soul because he would pay, and he had remembered something, as he knew the location of the place Eden wanted, because they had torn apart all his servants. But Eden said it wasn't necessary. Rooney said he clearly felt his emotions, and he strongly wanted it, but Eden confessed he had made a mistake, sending his 2 servants to handle it. Rooney begged him to wait, since he had sworn to God, and he was a bastard who bit his master, asking how he dared to say the false name of Vachexer and returned to his position as a hunting dog. He also wanted to know if Eden wasn't afraid of divine punishment, but Eden smiled and asked about that, telling him to get out of there. After the interrogation, the mutants and vampires were burned by the villagers. They checked to see if everything had turned to ashes, because they had been suppressed by fear. After controlling their emotions, everyone bowed their heads to Eden and expressed their gratitude. The benefactor who drove out the terrible misfortune and told them to offer prayers for themselves. And the Lord's name of the village became that of the remaining son of the former chief who lost his life to the mutant. The boy asked if he was qualified, since he had never done anything like this, but Eden said His Majesty allowed the boy to remain unharmed, and that, on his own account, he should be the one to take care of the village. As much responsibility as he might feel, he couldn't run anymore and should train alongside the people of the village, and he could ask the church to rebuild a safe place without collecting taxes. The boy cried and gave thanks, because he would express his gratitude for such grace. In the Lord's castle office, Eden said the report was already finished. This contains information about what he saw during the eternal snowstorm, about the king with an important form, and that they would proceed with their investigation. The church will report and absolve Daryl and Scene, saying it will take care of the matter regarding Tyrone running away since he was out of time, and all the information has been sent to the church. And the last thing was, not long ago in the office of Tegan from the Holy Empire, Uriel asked why God would tolerate suffering in the world and whether mere creatures could understand divine will. Eden said that was what he thought, but believed it came hand in hand with the blind faith of people. Except for sutras, most people create miracles through faith, and Uriel asked if that included the paladin's work performing miracles, since that was also faith. Eden said tribes believe in a warrior god with a body beyond human, and that the race considers the seed to be the source of all things. A group of believers caused an incident equivalent to divine power. He wondered if she recognized those people as gods too, because in most religions, people's gods were diverse, always omnipotent, and every value they spread was fundamental. Due to people believing in a perfect god, and humans used their teeth to bite and cry for others, especially since the majority of residents believed in Vachexer as a god, and all other religions were heretical. In general, this was the faith she denied behind her eyes, raising her voice and avoiding conversation with others. But Uriel had a look of relief, as it was hard to think about Uriel being conflicted by that. She wondered why God seemed to have created such a terrible world, and whether it was an intentional test to try people's faith, and whether God truly wanted that. And she asked herself whether he had given so much sacred power and immense authority, but it was a long question without an answer. So she asked if he believed in the truths of Vachexer. The young man denied hating everything except annihilation and altruism, for he especially hated treating demi-humans as slaves, because he only acted according to his own will. But he did not serve God. Instead, he used him as a principle, and Uriel acted based on her own dogmas too. It was sacrilegious to say, but Eden looked like a god, so she decided she'd ask just one more question. She wanted to know how on earth he could use the power of Vachexer. Eden said he couldn't tell her, but he'd soon resolve whatever questions she had. Outside, Daryl knocked, asking if Eden was there, and the young man asked what was going on. A paladin had been identified outside the city. Eden wondered if he had drunk blood, and if that was the case, it was only natural for him to come after him. the one who defeated the mutant, and he was sure it was Tyrone that Bernie had spoken about. But he hoped it wasn't true. He wondered if Tyrone had drunk blood, because turning from a paladin into a vampire was a serious problem. Daryl warned that he was already close by, and the paladin understood, thinking he could be coming from any direction. But then he saw a man on horseback in front of him. Eden called out Tyrone's name. However, the rider only turned around, laughing and saying the Lord was truly a great man. And that was exactly what made him all the more hateful. Eden drew his sword, saying that was a load of crap. As Tyrone charged toward him, Eden blocked the strike with his spear, asking if he had drunk the blood. Yet the soldier asked if he was curious. Eden felt a revulsion he usually only felt when facing a demon, and the destroyer of evil recognized him. But suppression came first. He threw Tyrone far away with a spear strike. Eden noticed the color of the blood and wondered if he wasn't a vampire, as the other paladin collapsed in the snow. Thus, the man approached the fallen one, calling his name, asking Tyrone to stop the pointless resistance and whether he admitted his changes. He responded that it was true he had committed horrible sins. As an incompetent and weak bastard, he didn't even know what to do, and his greed cost the lives of his subordinates. Later, he begged the demons for his own life. Eden asked what he meant, but Tyrone confessed his guilt, though he hadn't admitted defeat yet. He stood up, as Eden asked if he really thought he could win in that state. It was obvious to anyone that he would lose, yet he kept doing pointless things. Tyrone said his opponent must think he's stupid, and Eden agreed, because in the end, it was still a waste of time, and if he didn't say anything, he would be executed with no forgiveness for his sins. Tyrone stands frozen in fear, but charges forward with his sword while shouting, trying to strike Eden with a slash. But the young man leaps, spinning his spear in the air, and moves toward Tyrone with a golden gleam, finally striking and sending Tyrone's sword flying away. Tyrone tries to grasp his last spark of hope, but Eden believes it's already over, causing an explosion amidst the snow. Tyrone lies on the ground, his armor shattered. He thinks that the swing sent him flying just by moving the spear, and that this man's skills were beyond his imagination. Eden says he'll give him one last chance to apologize, asking why he came to him. Tyrone is terrified and unresponsive, remembering his subordinates pleading to be saved while he begged for his own life. He remembered the voice that defeated him in every moment of every day, and the demon saying that if he wanted to erase the feeling of defeat, he should drink the blood of that body and become even stronger. Tyrone threw the vial far away, falling to the ground right after. He groans that he didn't know whether to believe him or not, but he wanted to die as a paladin, so he didn't drink the blood, and that's why he came there. In case the mutant tested him again, this time he promised he would move and fight because he believed in his paladin's honor. But of course, all of that was before crossing this territory, and when he arrived, he saw people thanking Eden and asking how to repay their debt, because it was all thanks to the paladin, and he said everything was already over. Eden asks if the reason was guilt for coming back, saying that was irresponsible. If he wanted to save the villagers, he should have requested troops instead of coming alone. Tyrone says he already knew that, but felt inferior to the noble appearance of the other paladin, because it was Eden, a paladin with extraordinary achievements, surrounded by hundreds of rumors, and the type he had always admired. The man wanted to say more because the place where he stored the evidence and memories of the crime was on his office desk. He threw away the black blood and Eden took it, but it was enough as evidence. Though it wasn't a way to cleanse his sins, he truly wanted to protect the villagers. Soon the aspects would come after him and reach the place where the mutants were. Eden asks if all of that is true, because dealing with mutants should be easy for them. And in the end, he wants to die at the hands of an aspect, but Tyrone says he would be defeated by the mutants before that. Eden reflects that if all of this is true, then Tyrone begged for his life from the devil and struggled with temptation. But he repented for his sins and tried to pay the price, though he never forgot about saving those people. A blue flame lights up as Eden wonders if he should lose his life, since the aspect of execution would take his life without remorse, and to them, the church was like God. But there was no mercy for heretics or those who harmed the dignity of the church, and in the end, Tyrone would lose his life to the aspects. However, every human makes mistakes, and it wasn't truly just to take the life of someone who repents for their sins. Something is thrown at the two of them, but Eden extends his spear to block it, catching the war axe with a single hand. Eden thinks there's no helping it, because he never thought she would come so quickly, and the girl says he can even block with one hand. So he must be Lord Eden, whom she had long wanted to meet, as she had much to say. But she would formally greet him after destroying the traitor's skull. Eden wonders why it had to be her. The girl apologizes for being rude and drawing her sword in front of the hero, asking for forgiveness. However, the traitor Tyrone must be executed. The man screams in fear right there. The woman dashes past Eden before he even notices, bursting from the ground with extreme speed and attempting to strike with her axe. But Eden puts his hand in front, stopping her from getting close to Tyrone. The woman loses her balance and asks what that was, directed at Lord Eden, stunned that she was thrown aside. Eden's spear glows with blue flames as he tells him to stop this. Tyrone wonders why Eden stopped the girl from trying to defeat him, and what kind of situation this was. The girl says she tried, but he still defended Tyrone and she wants to know why he's protecting the traitor. But Eden responds that he isn't a demon, he just doesn't want to see suffering. She questions him about the battle at the Grand Castle, saying she heard he made a mess, according to the words of one of the demonic cult's followers. Eden denies that Tyrone is a member of the cult, but the girl asks if his sins were greater than that. The Paladin didn't understand why she thought that way and reflects that the moment she said something, it was about the traitor. That woman was crazy, but the girl questions if he hadn't tried to execute as well. Eden denies it, saying he was only checking into Tyrone's crime, which he tried to explain to her. The girl is left without a response. Her companions approach as Sileron asks what he meant. Jude complains that she went ahead on her own again, and the girl apologizes, while Eden reflects that they must be Sileron's companions. One of them identifies Eden, and the young man says the story continues with Tyrone performing his duty as a holy knight. He faced an enemy and was defeated. It was a 150-year-old demon. He was defeated without time to recover, and as the aspects knew, all Imperial forces were busy, but he needed help. Jude says, in other words, that meant the traitor would use them as tools to fight at the cost of his own life. Eden thinks he finally found someone who thinks, agreeing and saying he never wished for defeat. Jude asks if there is any evidence to support his opinion, but the Paladin denies it. The companion explains that in that case, they don't know if the story is true or not, and maybe he was tricked by the traitor. Eden says that before answering, he'll conduct an investigation, so Tyrone's defeat is not the solution. Jude agrees if he insists, but he doesn't need to meet the gallows, and Eden thinks that's good because the execution was suspended. Then he says that Tyrone wasted the time of busy people due to his incompetence, and if he feels guilty, he should deal with his mistakes on his own. But if he feels remorse, he returned to the land of ice and prayed to God, thinking that from now on, it's Tyrone's time, and the man speaks of his Lord truthfully, thanking him as he stands up. Sileron says that since it's all over, it's time to enjoy defeating those transformed monsters. But Eden apologizes because he already defeated all the beasts. She asks about the bodies, happy to help clean up the ones turned to dust on the ground. Eden apologizes again, saying he already burned everything, and the girl drops to the ground in frustration, saying it's not her day. But if she looks ahead, maybe she'll have a deeper conversation with him next time, wanting to know if he knew the taste of demon, and the young man denies it, saying he doesn't want to know, reflecting that he doesn't need to take in meaningless things anymore. Jude calls out to Lord Eden, saying he has news for him, and the young man asks what it is. He says the campaign was canceled and the captured troops will soon be released, thanking him for his hard work. But anyway, he forgot to introduce himself. He is Jude, a holy mage of the night. Eden shakes his hand and says it's a pleasure to meet him, thinking that Tegan has been doing a good job in his place. Jude says he knew Eden was a special friend of the Inquisitor Exarath, and the young man agrees, saying it's something like that. The mage says he's been appointed as head of the Heresy Investigation Council and assistant to the Grand Master of the Knights. Eden looks down thoughtfully, thinking that Tegan, who's putting this man in important positions, was the one who recommended Exarath, and it seemed like they agreed to work together, since the purge and the internal corruption would begin to be addressed. It seemed like there was no need to worry about the Empire, and he says that's great news. If Exarath becomes the assistant to the Grand Master of the Knights, he will outrank him, and Eden must send a message to resolve Tyrone's situation. A bandaged man looks at Eden, nodding his head. It's Jot from the Holy Execution Squad. Jude says there's one final piece of news. He had a nomination for promotion in the Senate meeting hall. A man reads that he defeated a snow leopard, discovered something unnatural during the war, and saved a great hero, in addition to passing the Arhan test. And all of that was done in a month, and can't be explained by mere luck. And another man agrees, saying it's only normal for him to be promoted, even to the rank of a noble. Tegan says the agenda discussion is over and he has to leave, commenting that Eden returned to the Empire and left again, asking what he's planning this time, because he's like a storm explosion wherever he goes. Jillian says he'll leave at dawn, and Eden agrees, apologizing for the inconvenience, thinking that there's nothing left to do in the north, so the only thing left is to leave, and he has no choice but to head toward the King of the North, the Empire, and the Church. Jillian complains that the boy is leaving all the work to him and walking off rudely, but Eden asks who he left the important matters with, wishing him good luck, while reflecting that when he met Sileron before, he felt the same as before, but wasn't sure. But with the power Xerath gave him, the sacred flame, because in fact, those specific conditions for activating a sacred flame occurred when his bond with Vetchexstar resonated, and that meant that when he stopped Sileron this time, his faith resonated with him, but he didn't know what that meant. In any case, in games, characters differ depending on their chosen path. But the important thing he learned by sensing the activation of the sacred flame meant he simply needed to practice that feeling. So he calls out to Gillen quickly, asking if he could have a duel with him before leaving. Gillen agrees, telling the boy to get ready, since he should show his skills, drawing his sword, leaping from the ground in a second. At daybreak, Eden's horse departs the city. He says that was the direction he would take. Sane and Daryl get excited and cheer happily. That was their next destination, the coastal city of Ariez. Ariel asks how on earth Eden can use the power of Vetchexstar. The boy says it's hard to explain, but he will soon give answers to his old questions. The city looked beautiful with the bluish sea water, Daryl says this place was completely different from anywhere else and that it was the sacred land of adventurers. Eden says it's the only entry point to the unknown continent across the ocean, and it's natural that many adventurers come here, and the hunter agrees, asking if Sign would be careful since it's close to the riverbank where she could get kidnapped by a mermaid. The girl says that's a lie even kids don't believe anymore. Daryl jokes that her innocent worldview will soon collapse, and Eden reflects that this kind of atmosphere isn't bad. Sane questions what he's talking about regarding childhood, since she sees blood every day and that kind of thing doesn't exist. Daryl is disappointed, and a little girl apologizes, saying she didn't mean it that way. But she has a question for the Paladin, asking if mermaids eat humans, and Eden says it could be the case, because they eat each other frightening scene. He thinks he was too direct, shattering her childhood again. But someone with a tray says the mermaid dish that was ordered has arrived. The man says it's a wild mermaid that was sliced like a fish and cooked, and Daryl comments that it looks beautiful and tastes delicious. They've already ordered food and ask Eden if they'll be eating it. But Eden tells Sign not to worry, because he would never agree to eat that. Thinking that this topic is forbidden, he drops a hint, saying that mermaids were originally creatures like them. Daryl asks if he's saying they're human, and Eden tells him he'll understand soon, because it was finally time for that. Before Yuan arrives and reads his letter upon arriving, he had someone to meet first, saying they had work to do, and he would take care of this first, and after they finished their meal, they should go to the Mermaid's Tear in the center of the city. In the center of the coastal city of Arias, inside the Adventurers Guild, Eden turns while climbing a staircase. A girl asks if he was looking for her, saying it's a pleasure to meet him and introducing herself as the adventurer Yuna, a high-ranking adventurer. She asks why he was looking for her, and Eden replies it's to accompany him at sea. The girl wants to know the direction of his journey, but Eden says it's into the middle of the sea, and he wants her to guide him to the ocean's depths. Yuna laughs and says that's a joke fitting of a paladin's path. She was known for being a skilled adventurer, but she had a hidden truth he couldn't say due to the banishment, so he asks if she can take him to the ocean floor. The girl asks what that means, but Eden decides they should have some snacks and talk about it again. Arias was famous for serving mermaid dishes, and he knew about a new restaurant. He asks what happened to her, thinking she was enjoying the fresh ocean breeze, and he was right, because Yuna's true identity was a mermaid, making the girl uneasy as she wonders if he knows the truth, since she must take his life, and it would be easy. Deciding she should try to run first, she attempts to do so, but Eden grabs her, telling her not to resist each other, grabbing the girl's hand before she can escape. She wonders if he defeated her instantly. Looking back, uneasy about it, Eden says he has no intention of hurting her, which relieves the girl as well. They both fall silent as Eden lets her go. He says he needs to go to the sea and asks if the girl can accept his request. She remains silent for a few minutes. The mermaids live in the sunken city of Atlantis, located deep in the Baboon Strait, where the Siren tribe serves the god of the sea and originally transforms themselves. They live in the ocean and also on land, but in the war where Vachexer defeated the other gods, the god of the sea was shattered and sealed. After that, a strange transformation took place. For the Siren tribe, their power of transformation and magic deteriorated. In Atlantis, they appear human, but when they leave and touch land, they appear as monsters. Most of them live forgotten by human history, and some even became the kind of mermaids that humans consume. But unlike the others, Yuna held the full power of the sea god, being the only servant and liberator of Atlantis. She asks what he knew. Eden says that according to his plan, he was aligned with her, thinking about Yuna's desire for freedom. The great hero Elpis, servant of Vachexer, was the only one to imprison the Siren tribe in Atlantis. Now free, they often visit the remnants of Elpis, because the secret relic of Elpis could help resolve Ural's debts, and that process, he would join her. At the Tear of Mermaids in the coastal city of Iria, he says that's where they'll begin. Daryl asks him who she is, the lovely young lady at his side, and Eden asks if she can share her story in general. It would be easier for her to explain that way, thinking that when the ban is broken, it'll be easier for others to hear the information, and it's classified as something Eden knows. The girl asks if she should tell everything, since he also knows and could tell it himself, asking if he intends to get to know her without knowing anything. Eden says that for the sake of his plan and safety, they should put on a little performance. It's better if she tells the story, as that way only her identity and purpose are revealed. Yuna nods and says her reason is simple, because she is what they call a mermaid from the Siren tribe deep in Atlantis. Daryl falls to the floor asking what that thing on her arm is, and Eden tells him not to be shocked. Sane says the girl is incredibly beautiful, especially that specific color, and Yuna questions him about it. They interact, while Eden asks Daryl to clean himself up and sit properly, noting that Sign is good at making friends, even with Yoop. Yuna asks who Yoop is, and he explains it's a god that eats demons and sleeps, which makes the girl laugh. He was heading to Atlantis with Yuna, but both of them and Yuan had another mission, and Sign would stay behind with Yoop. Daryl asks if he's going to Atlantis alone, and he denies it, because the three of them are going to Atlantis, and someone knocks at the door. Eden says it seems she has arrived and someone should open the door. Daryl goes to do it. The Paladin reflects that she would arrive soon anyway, and the hunter opens the door, surprised. A short-haired girl says it's been a while since she last saw Lord Eden, and this is the perfect time. The girl who had just arrived was the Saint Uriel. He had sent a letter asking her to come without telling anyone. The girl asks if he's really trying to clear his schedule for 10 days, saying that's incredibly reckless. Yuan says that if the saint is worried, Eden has something to tell her. The words were a bit harsh, and Uriel assumes he said something that borders on blasphemy again. In that place, she thinks it's hard to find anyone like that, asking what's wrong with this guy because he's seriously frightening. He turns around, asking who this person is to Eden, since he thought Eden's type was men. The Paladin places a hand on his head. Daryl kneels on the floor, apologizing for being rude to the saint and saying he'll pay with his life. Eden says that if it had been another saint, she would have taken his life. Uriel tells him to stand up, because if she killed people without reason, no one would survive. She asks Eden if she's right, and he agrees, but says he wants to thank her for working so hard and coming such a long way, then asks what excuse she gave. Uriel says everyone thinks she went to a funeral, which is practically blasphemy. Yuna apologizes to Yuan and asks what this funeral is that the two of them are talking about. The knight says it's a ritual of praying in the chapel for a month, where eating, sleeping, and receiving visitors are forbidden. But Eden interrupts, saying that kind of thing is pointless, and there's no reason for her to feel guilty because she did well, since the path taken from the beginning was to pursue divinity, not superstition, because divine power isn't obtained that way, and he brought the girl to show the evidence of her being in first place. Uriel says that he will definitely show it. Eden wonders if Vatchexer is truly omnipotent, since after Uriel started doubting that fact, falling from her disbelief into brainwashing, and in the end, collapsed terribly. And when Uriel hadn't done that to herself, a great force would have broken her heart. He would personally destroy that strong belief, and Eden calls for Yuna, asking for them to begin the conversation. Everyone in the room grows serious as the talk begins, and Yuna starts to speak about her past, leaving Yuan, Daryl, and Cyan in disbelief. Even Uriel is shocked by what she hears. She asks why Vatchexer turned people like them into monsters just for living in the ocean, saying people eat mermaid flesh, because there was no other way, crying out in anger. She runs away, while Daryl tries to call the saint to stop her. Eden remains silent near Yuna. Heading outside, Daryl asks what they're going to do. Eden asks how the saint is doing, and he tries to answer, because she kept crying in her room after quietly kneeling down. The Paladin reflects that soon the people of the Empire will know the truth, and there will be a huge reaction, because he needs a necessary process for the right things, and he was concerned about those who still have no rest within the Empire. Yup is asleep on top of a chest. Eden descends the stairs to meet with his group. He wonders when everyone managed to calm down, and Daryl asks if he can ask the saint a question, wanting to know what happened to the Desert Paladin, and Uriel asks if he means Lord Tyrone, because he was dismissed and was going through a trial, and Eden reflects that Sereth handled everything well. He says that everyone is finally gathered, and Yuan greets Lord Eden, saying they've been waiting for the scriptures together. Aboard the ship, Eden, Yuna, and Uriel head out to sea. Cyan and her companions wish their lord a safe journey, but Eden stands up, steering the boat, which continues sailing across the sea. Then the Paladin comments that Uriel seems to have calmed down a bit. Uriel says things are slowly becoming clearer, but as someone who serves God, it's something she should have known by now. Eden says that's just how the saint put it, and suddenly, something happens. Uriel asks what all those vibrations are, but the Paladin turns and asks the same thing. A hurricane forms on the water, and Yuna says it's an unexpected problem because there's a surprise attack coming from a group of mermaids, and she can't explain it, asking if this isn't the haunted area, and Eden asks how much further until the destination, and Yuna says they're close. The sea continues shaking and causes the boat to rock violently as well. Eden thinks this is insanely difficult, and if it continues, the ship will sink. Yuna tells everyone to come back, because if they eat her scales, they'll be able to breathe and move through the sea. Uriel eats it and complains about the bad taste. Eden reflects that it's difficult to enter combat while protecting a saint and with a ship on the verge of breaking apart. So he says that when he gives the signal, everyone should jump. Yuna asks the Paladin not to take their lives because she'll try to stop everything from happening. Eden agrees with her, so the girl agrees, saying she'll act quickly. Then he starts to count, reaching 1, and finally reaching 3 as the boat cracks. He jumps into the sea. The boat finally breaks and sinks into the ocean. They dive into the depths. Eden starts forming scales on his face. He asks Atlantis to just wait for him. Uriel reflects that it's incredible, because now she can breathe underwater. But she notices something different in her body. She's growing a tail. She says she turned into a mermaid, as a fish-like creature attacks, trying to bite her. Uriel is completely terrified, but the creature is stopped by Eden, who punches it in the face. He asks if the saint is alright, and she confirms. Then the Paladin starts to guide her, heading toward the mermaids at the bottom of the sea. Uriel says these ones seem calm, and Eden explains that it's because of Yuna. The mermaids originally served the sea deity, and she has a relationship with Yuna, so they instinctively feel the energy of the sea god. She asks how bold they are to block her path, and if they want to live, they should get out of there. The fish simply turn around to leave. Yuna says that luckily suppression using divine energy worked. She thanks her friends for waiting and guiding them. Eden reflects that the current and water pressure were stronger than before, and he was sure it was beneath their current position. Uriel seemed tired, which was probably natural since she wasn't physically active. But she asks why they're taking this path all of a sudden, so Eden explains that he came there to help, holding Uriel's hand, and asking her to relax a little and just follow him. The girl agrees and says she'll try, but she reflects that it's still a little difficult, wondering if it's really possible to swim through this mysterious path in the ocean's depth. But she denies it because it's impossible and there's no feeling of a place led by divine belief. Either way, she shifts her thoughts. These were new experiences since she was with Lord Eden, thinking that he was a strange man. In the underwater city called Atlantis, the trio stands at its entrance. Eden suddenly calls for the saint, showing that their hands were still joined. The girl pulls away, apologizing repeatedly, thinking she didn't mean to hold on purposely, while Eden tells the saint to come quickly. Because from that point on, Yuna's abilities are unlocked thanks to the air pressure. A guard asks who she is, but Eden knocks him out before he can do anything further. He says he doesn't want to take a soldier's life, so Yuna should relax, and says that if the barrier breaks and the water escapes, all residents will turn into monsters. But the curse would save the submerged residents because he would maintain the barrier and bear the curse upon his own race. And she would lead the sirens to the surface as previously planned. The team would wait for them outside with the boat. Yuna agrees, saying it would minimize the damage. Eden says it's obvious that not everyone will survive, and if they leave things as they are, her race would live forever in ignorance, sending their own families to slaughter. He reflects that it's a familiar dilemma, because it's about the fragile pretext of saving the future. Every time he makes a choice like that, his heart feels weak and frustrated. Uriel notices the frustration coming from the night. Inside the temple of the sea god Shaylin, Yuna says that the Paladin has arrived, and this is the moment organized by the Siren tribe, and she will pray to see them again on land. So they approach a statue where Uriel comments on its size, because Shaylin was the first who started it all. Eden tells them to just proceed with their goal, because behind the door, there's a key that would answer all of the saint's doubts. They stand in front of an even larger statue of Shaylin. Eden approaches before the saint, thinking that he could finally use this, because he received it from Arhan in the ruins, granting him the authority of a representative of Vachexar. So he calls to Shaylin, saying he speaks as a representative of God, because Vachexar forgives her sins. The whole church turns golden all of a sudden, and the shield begins to break there. Yuna thinks the barrier has finally been shattered. Eden says that after the city is sealed, he has something to tell her, and reflects that saving Uriel was simple. There was no need to bring her to this dangerous place. Then he says he needs the saint's 2 eyes, asking her to give them to him, while reflecting that the real reason he brought Uriel was to obtain the eyes of the mind. The saint asks if she heard that correctly, because he was saying he needed to take her eyes. Eden wonders if she was trying to confirm the truth and asks if she didn't know what that meant, since the saint had already figured something out. Uriel realizes that he isn't lying, and says he didn't hesitate to profane right in front of her, and she was certain he knew. But then the statue of Shaylin calls out to the mortal, asking if Vachexar brought him there. Eden denies it, saying he came of his own will, and Shaylin asks if he's saying the king never forgave this sinner, and if that's the case, then the curse will not be lifted. He was trying to lead the children of the ocean to ruin, because to commit sins while still under a curse, the barrier will break and the city will be flooded, with everyone turning into monsters and meeting their end. Eden says he knows that, and it's because they are pagans who have served him since the beginning, and their sect would never forgive paganism, so if they reached land safely, all that awaited them would be cremation or a living trial. But he has a talisman, and they can be forgiven without fail, and he would ensure that everything wouldn't be destroyed, because Yuna had been secretly spying on this for a long time in the Empire, and he had been hiding for even longer. Shaylin says that means he was explicitly not authorized, and asks if he thought the great Emperor Vachexar would allow this. The power of the sea god converges with the golden power of the boy. Uriel complains she can't breathe, and Eden tells her to wait just a little longer, saying it had been 200 years since his lord descended. Shaylin asks if Vachexar ascended to the heavens again, but Eden didn't know about that. However, if the woman beside him loses her life, he would certainly annihilate all of Shaylin's people. The goddess becomes aware of the danger she's in. Eden says he won't lose his life due to countermeasures, because he has a plan for this. The goddess decides she'll listen to what he has to say, saying he's not someone ordinary, since he doesn't tremble in fear in front of him, the sea god, and she assumes any threat from a body was just a lingering thought. Calling him an audacious brat who never loses his will, she says there's no doubt his sins have now been forgiven by this divine power, and he mustn't believe in it, since she's only doing this out of debt. Then she points her hands at Eden, saying he is the one who will break the chain, because he gave a false title along with immense power, asking him to deny the defeat of the other, because this is his only chance, and he must be careful. Eden had released the title of Liberator of Atlantis. The two sail through the depths of the ocean. Uriel asks where they're heading now, and Eden says they're ruins of the great hero who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Arhan. The saint says all the residents became mermaids, but they're safe, so the Paladin explains that it's because of Yuna's power. Uriel had no choice but to move now, so she says that Eden asked her to give him the divine eye, the power of a god, and wonders if that's even possible. The boy says yes, a bit hesitantly. Uriel realizes that's why he brought her here, since since she didn't know, because he was one of the few people who treated her sincerely. Eden responds that he wasn't sure if she would go into the depths after hearing his intentions, and the divine eye wasn't the only reason. He reminds her that she promised to tell the truth about the gods. Uriel comments that it's hard to tell where he's looking, since she's sure he'll do this again, and it's frustrating, so she'll just give it to him. Eden says that's not the case, and she should understand that this isn't for his personal gain, because he's not asking for an immediate answer, as she has plenty of time to think about it. And the evidence of what she thinks about God has become clearer, so she will decide. They continue their path, and Eden reflects that it's clear, because there was a possibility she might refuse, but it was still quite low, and since he planted doubt in her mind, he could take advantage of that. And besides, it's easier to manipulate the plot when Uriel is shaken by the divine eye, so he would make a swift exchange. So for now, it was purely Uriel's decision. They finally arrive at the hero's ruins. Uriel comments that it looked like a barrier that wasn't meant to keep things out, and Eden agrees, saying it didn't seem penetrable, and they can only access it with divine power. The saint is startled as she looks ahead, seeing a skeletal body wrapped in chains, bound to prevent it from escaping. She calls it a devil, but Eden decides they'll take this path for now. Uriel apologizes for just a moment. Since her body can't move anymore, Eden takes the girl's hand. She repeats that she can't move, but the paladin says he'll help. The saint asks if he's doing this on purpose, but Eden says that once she calms down, she can decipher the stone on the platform. Uriel says she understands and will begin anyway, so they walk hand in hand. The girl activates her emerald eyes, reading inscriptions on an ancient screen. Uriel says this was the true identity of that demon and wants to know if it's true. Eden agrees because he was someone who once prayed and followed the orders of Vachexar, but he fell from grace and became a demon known as the origin of the beginning. And his vast existence is the only proof that Vachexar is not omnipotent. That is Elpis, the one who was once a great hero. Scripture says that Elpis, under Vachexar's command, imprisoned the Siren tribe in the vast ocean, but he was burdened by his own horrific actions. Anger, despair, hatred, and envy were the primordial demons born from human emotions, and Elpis succumbed to corruption, unable to overcome his guilt. In the process, he lost his eyes and ears, becoming a vessel for screams, yet still unable to endure his own remorse. He decided to eliminate the source of his guilt. If the Siren tribe disappeared from the world, he would no longer be tormented, and the purpose of Elpis, who had become a demon, was to wipe out the Siren tribe. After that, he sealed himself there, holding on to the last of his sanity. But if the seal is broken, he will go after them immediately. Uriel becomes uneasy, but Eden tells her she has a choice: to awaken that demon or turn away and leave, because it was clear that he was thinking of awakening the demon, thinking that from the ruins of great heroes, occasionally memories from 200 years ago and lost scriptures are discovered. But simply taking those scriptures is not possible, so one must prove their worth to obtain them. The requirement for entering Elpis's palace in the ruins of Atlantis is to annihilate the fallen hero with one's own hands. Uriel must be warned of something like that. The girl asks, in case of an unfavorable scenario, if they fail to subdue him, they would be creating a tragedy with their own hand. And after all, they were using people's lives as collateral for their goal, and that wasn't the right thing to do. Eden responds that he cannot deny that, but in any case, Vachexar left Elpis, who sealed himself in Atlantis, but it is said that at some point Elpis will awaken and unleash his power. Uriel asks what that means, but Eden explains that the shackles will gradually disappear, and there is no eternal punishment, so even if not now, he would one day be free. Uriel says that if Elpis is one of the primordial demons, they are risking their lives, but Eden says that with the saint at his side, he has a chance, since on top of everything else, he has the victories earned through Arhan's trial. Uriel says she will believe in the path the Lord is walking. She then begins to pray to the holy Vachexar, calling for his sword of annihilation to light up the night and hold the sun in place. With darkness descending and judgment being served, she asks for an answer. Eden thinks the message was understood because the blessing came from Uriel, and if divine power is beyond imagination, it's more than he can control. Eden rises from the ground with his sword, charging toward the sealed body of Elpis. He prepares for a descending strike, aiming to strike the fallen former hero, and so he severs his left arm. Elpis writhes in pain, now without his hand, and awakens. But Eden rushes out and lifts Uriel in his arms, saying he'll take her to safety. He carries her to the stone platform, asking if the girl is alright, but the demonic energy emanating from Elpis is too strong. Eden says that the seal holding Elpis has been broken, and now he will slowly begin to move. So when the paladin prepares to fight, Eden is interrupted by a demonic figure appearing behind the saint. He moves quickly, thinking to defend her, but realizes it's already too late. Being pierced in place of the girl, Uriel cries out to the Lord. Eden coughs up blood after being wounded. As Elpis licks his fingers, the saint agonizes over her friend's injury. Eden asks the saint to begin healing him, and the woman agrees while crying. They rise from the ground. The saint begins to use her divine healing power on the paladin. Eden tells her to provide support from there, and the girl complains that he's still injured. But the paladin is already healed, and says he'll take care of the creature, so the saint should assist, and she says she understands. The young man thinks that Elpis now has his blood, heading toward the fallen hero, who turns to face him. Eden lands a punch straight to his face, forcing the creature to retreat with the blow. It slams its head on the ground and is thrown, causing a massive explosion. Eden draws his spear imbued with divine power, but Elpis gets up and charges at him, striking his weapon before the boy can attack. He thinks the demon is incredibly fast. The creature lifts its leg to kick, striking the paladin's stomach and making him drop the spear. Eden spits blood before falling. Elpis slams him into the ground with great force, but amidst the wreckage, blood drips onto the ground. Eden stands up, holding his spear and enduring the pain. He says she's still called the saint, because with those claws, his wounds would have been sliced like paper. He throws his armor aside, telling the saint that he's fine and asking her to continue her support. Uriel says she understands and resumes praying, while Eden reflects that the wounds from that bastard were still regenerating, so he had to finish this before he fully healed. Elpis screams before charging toward the young man, and Eden emanates his aura while observing the creature. Then both of them advance toward each other, beginning the clash. Eden strikes with a horizontal spear swing, but Elpis dodges, countering with several claw swipes that Eden block. The creature even manages to land a hit on Eden's arm, but Eden retaliates, landing a blow on his rib. He asks the saint to keep bestowing blessings on him, because he was going to defeat the monster in a few moves. So Uriel does, praying to Vechexer to save her friend. Blessings quickly descend upon Eden. The man grips his spear, now empowered, and says finally, this was it. The true power coming from the Saint Uriel, and he charges at Elpis, unleashing multiple high-speed slashes with his spear. Eden turns back again, trying to land another strike, but the creature dodges. Eden leaps from the ground with force, striking and launching the fallen hero far away. Elpis has his limbs severed by the saint, now reinforced with holy power, and his head is separated from his body. A massive explosion erupts in the battle area. Eden remains standing, holding his spear. He says the creature was completely turned to dust, and was far more powerful than he imagined. But a bad sensation takes over his body. Collapsing to the ground, Eden thinks about the pain, and wonders if it's a recoil from the blessing Uriel gave him. He knows Elpis is not lifeless yet, and that phase 1 had only ended, because if he collapses like this, it'll all be over, and Elpis's particles begin to gather. Eden braces himself with the spear and says if he had known about the recoil, he would have only used the blessing in phase 2. The particles of Elpis finally come together, but Eden's eyes start to close, and he loses consciousness as Uriel screams his name. Eden wakes up suddenly. Seeing Uriel beside him, he asks what happened, and wants to know if she jumped down just to heal him, because both her legs were broken. Then he tells her she should confirm her position in life more assertively. Uriel responds that it was her first time seeing this level of recoil, and she was shocked, but the battle wasn't over yet. Eden agrees, saying she's right, asking that when he gives the signal, she should bless him again. The girl absolutely refuses, because it's too dangerous and continuing like that would cost him his life. Eden draws his spear, thinking that now is the time to suggest a trade. His spear begins to emit a golden light. All the scriptures glow in blue. He asks for a moment, holding Uriel, and the girl says it's true her leg is hurt, but this is too sudden. Eden walks with the girl in his arms until they reach the scriptures. He asks her to read the altar, where it says that the one who discovers it may exchange power with mutual consent, and says this is a reference within the ruins. Uriel says he definitely didn't ask for her eyes just to find others, and Eden agrees because he was human too, and he received the power to revive those who lost their lives from the sea god. But sadly, it's a one-time only power. Uriel asks if, by offering her mind's eye so he won't lose his life from the blessing's recoil, it means he wanted to be saved. Eden says he knows it's an unreasonable request, but thinks that in the end, no power will be left for Uriel, so he says that from now on, it will be harder to defeat the fallen hero once he awakens. Elpis begins to take form. Uriel says clearly her friend had said the chances of winning were high, and Eden explains he had confidence in the saint's blessing, but had no idea about the recoil. He apologizes, saying it was his fault, but the saint says if they fail the mission, everyone there will lose their lives, and she felt like everything was intentional. He took too many lives as hostage, and it was no different from threatening her through the mind's eye. Eden says this isn't the time for that, but Uriel asks if he had any respect for all those people, because all of it led to just one word. The paladin closes his eyes and agrees with the girl. Uriel looks at him with her power, implying that it was a lie, and Eden says that, as he had said before, he was human too. But she asks him not to make that joke again, while thinking he was a detestable man, the only person she cannot read with the eyes of the mind, because he lies as easily as drinking water, hurting her without any reason, and sometimes it feels like he only sees people as objects. But he's someone who always creates a good ending, so Uriel suggests that he make her a promise, that he must never use that power on her. Eden agrees with the girl and places his hand on the stone. Runes spread over the paladin's arm, Uriel reflects that she had this power her entire life, so she feels regret, but still, it's a relief, because the eyes of the mind taught her many lessons and at the same time, left hundreds of scars. And by seeing the other side of people, she believed he had no romantic feelings beyond human nature. But she realized that's not the case because she was becoming disoriented by expecting things from people. And she didn't know what was in Eden's heart, but she would check it for herself, wanting him to see the world through the Lord's eyes in the future. Eden activates his ocular power for the first time, saying he swears he'll make good use of it. Elpis was ready with his sword to strike them both. Uriel begins to pray, saying this would be a wager on his life, and Eden tells her not to relax. But Elpis introduces himself as Paladin Bellerhard and says he will personally finish the task he left incomplete. He releases demonic energy projectiles toward the pair. Eden protects them using divine power, while calling out to the Holy Woman, since blessing is a power that forcibly enhances an object's potential, and he knew it was a heavy burden even for the invoker. But regardless of the reason, she must give it her all, and Uriel says not to worry, because she would bet everything on the next blessing. Eden rises from the ground ready to strike, agreeing with the saint's goal as he aims to pierce Elpis. He lands a blow, but the hero blocks with his sword. Thus, they exchange strikes without landing any real hits. Eden is taking damage from blocking, but he forces Elpis to retreat with a horizontal slash. The woman begins to have her neck dissolved through her skin. Eden gives no time to rest and charges again, engaging in another fast exchange of blows with the fallen hero. Elpis shouts as he swings his sword sideways, landing a blow that sends Eden flying downward. The Paladin's weapon is driven into the ground. Eden is left wide open and knocked out, saying that the speed, already fast, had grown even greater. Elpis launches a projectile toward the man, piercing his chest immediately after. Eden begins to lose consciousness. The fallen hero approaches the man, stabbing his sword into his chest. Eden reflects that even if he uses the blessing, if he dodges, everything will be in vain. So first he must stop the enemy's movement. His spear falls into the snow. Gillen asks if he said it was inflammation, because that ability alone could be called excellent, but some level of improvement could come with practice. Eden says he thought the same, but was worried about how to use it. Gillen says he's a paladin who uses sword and spear, so if possible, it would be better to use it as a supply for his equipment. Thus, the swordmaster charges toward him, saying to block the strike somehow. The attack nears Eden as the master says he'll push him until he's ready. A light radiates from the ruin, and Eden says these are the teachings of Gillen. He pulls the sword from his own chest, grabbing the creature's wrist. Eden's hand begins to emit a blue flame. He says it reminds him of his old days, burning as he prepares to strike Elpis. He calls for Uriel and her blessing. The saint nods in response, beginning her prayer as Eden radiates sacred flame. Elpis screams in pain as he is burned. Eden grabs his spear, his eyes lighting up with hope once again. He says he will take Elpis's life, landing a strike with his spear while wielding the sacred flame. A golden light illuminates the entire battlefield, alongside a flame of blue and yellow. Eden commands the fallen hero to disappear from the world, striking repeatedly to prevent it from regenerating. The paladin watches the defeat of his opponent, as the golden light explodes across the battlefield, destroying all the remaining ruins of the hero. A trail of destruction is left behind by the hero's strike. Uriel stands up amidst the wreckage, coughing blood onto the ground right after. The girl tries to stand, thinking it was too much, as she hadn't expected to use healing and blessings in that amount. She needed to find Eden and revive him before she collapsed the same way, thinking she never imagined she could defeat Elpis on her own, and wants to know what kind of level this man was on in the world. Something rises behind the saint. She says the possibility of Lord Eden moving is low, and asks if it was possible that Elpis could still be alive even after those attacks. A hand emerges from the rubble on the ground, opening a hole in that massive abyss, and a figure stands in front of Uriel. The girl tries to call out to Elpis, but the figure standing is Eden, who then collapses to the ground right after, falling unconscious and on the brink of death. Uriel approaches him slowly, becoming aware of the situation before her. She heads toward Lord Eden. The girl asks if he's okay because he isn't breathing, so she places her head on his chest, saying that fortunately, his breathing is still faintly there. Eden must wait here because she will definitely heal him, placing her hand over his. The saint begins to heal the paladin. Eden's wounds start to disappear thanks to the healing blessing, but Uriel is the one who bleeds from the mouth. She fights to stay conscious while healing her friend. However, Eden touches her shoulder, calling her Holy Woman, and says to let him handle this now, because he's alright. The girl tries to protest, but the paladin says the saint's wounds are more serious than his, so he asks her to leave everything in his hands. They remain in the middle of the collapsing ruins, but Eden picks up the saint in his arms and says now that the master has fallen, the palace will slowly crumble, while thinking that his whole body was in pain and it felt like the blessing's recoil hadn't worn off yet, and if Uriel hadn't healed him, he would have broken all his bones just trying to escape. Eden notices a box among the debris. Uriel asks what that is, but Eden says that, including the key to solving the mystery of the saint, it contains the reason why they descended there. So first, they should escape, and then he'll set the girl down. and she agrees, saying she was going to ask him for the same thing. The boy agrees, allowing her to finally rest in peace. While escaping through the water, Eden tries to swim as fast as possible, holding the saint in his arms, who suddenly opens her eyes. She says they haven't reached the surface yet, because she felt so relieved that she lost consciousness for a moment. But she felt like she was being protected and blushes, thinking she's crazy for thinking that about a paladin. The girl notices her eyes suddenly burning, and even her fins had disappeared. Uriel can no longer breathe down there. Eden notices the saint's distress and wonders if Yuna's ability had faded, because they were in big trouble trying to reach the sea level, so he had no choice, since the only way was to inject oxygen directly as soon as possible. By kissing Uriel, the saint is able to breathe through mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and finally regains her breath next to Eden. The paladin looks seriously at the saint, while she blushes at him, but they finally reach the surface. They lift their heads out of the water. Eden says it was dangerous, but thankfully they managed to escape, yet Uriel backs away, asking him to take a step back. The ship approaches and someone shouts that they did well, because they're here and just need to grab the rope to climb aboard. Daryl asks Eden what all those injuries are, and Eden tells his subordinate not to make a fuss. Yuna hands a towel to the paladin and he thanks her, placing it on his shoulder and saying the saint's injuries are more serious than his, so they should provide first aid in the cabin. Eden tells her to rest there because he'll visit her shortly. Yuna asks what happened, because she never imagined she'd see him this badly hurt, but Eden says that Elpis had lost his life. The mermaid asks if that's true, and the paladin says if she doesn't believe it, she can go back and check. According to the original game, Yuna became the liberator of Atlantis, but half of the Siren race was sacrificed in the process of subjugating Elpis. He asks Yuan to give a Bible to the saint, and the knight agrees. Meanwhile, the mermaid thinks that the liberation of her tribe alone wasn't enough, but he also subdued the fallen hero, so she thanks him. But Eden interrupts, saying he did it for himself. He asks where the members of the tribe are, and the girl says they were taken to a nearby strait. Eden comments that in the process of liberation, their sins were forgiven by God, but if they continue praying to the sea god, they cannot live on land. He would stay in the strait for a few days, so she must persuade her tribe to convert to the religion of Vachexer as much as possible. Yuna asks to pose a question, wanting to know if he is truly a paladin of the church, because she honestly doesn't understand why he acts this way. From the church's perspective, they were pagans. Eden says he just doesn't like the smell of burnt people, thinking that the lost Bible he gave to Uriel contained the truth that would shake the foundations of Vachexer's religion. The die would have to be cast, and if she reads it, the only remaining remnant of her faith might be shattered. Wondering if Uriel will accept it, he knocks on the door, calling for her and saying he's going to enter the cabin. Uriel opens the door, completely bandaged, allowing the paladin to enter her room. A few hours earlier, she was sitting on the bed, saying that as a woman of God, she committed a sacrilege by kissing a knight. Of all days, it had to be the day the gods were to awaken. The man who stole her heart and her lips now seemed to want to steal the rest of the faith she had left. And if he takes that faith away, she wonders what he will ask for next. Eden sits in front of her and asks if she read the Bible. Uriel thinks that, just as expected, he didn't seem to care about what happened to her. So she says she read up to the part where the sacred land of Babylon fell, and Eden confirms that she's aware. Since Babylon, the land beyond the continent, is now hell, a place that once had hundreds of holy cities and was the headquarters of Vachexer's church, but became the battlefield where he descended. That happened over 200 years ago, and since then that place became the devil's land. In other words, it meant that Vachexer is not omnipotent, because he and his army were defeated and the Holy Land was annihilated. As a result, the Babylon of today is hell on earth, and the truth has been hidden all this time to make everyone believe that he is omnipotent. Uriel says that if this scripture is revealed to the world, it would be classified as forbidden material. Eden notes that she doesn't seem too shocked, and the saint says it's surreal. But just as he said, an orderly ceremony is inefficient. The paladin agrees, saying it's true. Being confined in a chamber is a waste of time, and it's more efficient to travel through countries and visit desolate lands. Missionary activity is the best method of practicing to gain divine power, and it's the correct way, according to Vachexar's teachings, to obtain holy strength. Uriel comments that she didn't think baptism was entirely useless, since after all, there are no pagans left to convert in the empire, and it's a growth criterion that only applies to conversion targets. Eden says the continent isn't made up of just hell. Beyond the eastern and western deserts, there's the province of Mato, where they worship their native religion. The girl says they can't subjugate or convert them, even in a crusade, and Eden agrees, since they normally pray and undergo baptism. But the latter part is correct, because he believes the continent's religion should be unified. Uriel is confused because he denies Vachexer more than anything. However, Eden says it's necessary for the future, while thinking about how hypocritical the contradiction is. The girl says he seems to be hiding secrets again, but Eden apologizes, since in this case, the saint has something to do. She wants to know if there are many conversion targets there. He says yes, since it's an empire. The girl questions whether it's not right for him to do it himself, but Eden says it's not right to treat everyone like a stepping stone for his growth, though he can't gain anything from them now, thinking that noble hypocrisy comes from fear and envy of others, and that's why one only gains divine power when it's directed toward oneself. Strangely, there was something he'd never seen in the game before. It was a unique talent only he possessed. Then the young man asks what she will do, and Uriel says that now that she has learned the true nature of Vachexer, she thinks she'll have to pretend that God is omnipotent for the sake of the mission, and had no justification to hide that. Eden says that if she just can't believe in God, she could believe in him instead. She is completely confused by the statement, but laughs, saying it really sounded like something Lord Eden would say. At the same time, in a street restaurant in the coastal city of Iria, people ask about the food. When the power of the sea god begins to fade, the mermaids will return to land and to their original form. Made from Oros, the city's residents will experience terrible nausea, and with this news quickly reaching the church's headquarters, Haxoreth comments that they were all leaders of the radical faction for reclaiming the Holy Land, and had been punished, and the reason they insisted on the director was very strange. Gavlin, a sacred guard, greets the Inquisitor, who asks what it is. The guard says it's a letter from Iria, and additionally, believe it or not, the Bible that had been sitting still began to write on its own, and Sereth is surprised, asking him to explain further. Gavlin says it's about the story of the Paladin Eden, and is reporting a direct connection to the Iria incident. Azarath chuckles, saying his words were like seeds, and he guessed his disciple would eventually be written into the Bible. But the guard says Eden was using a divine spear without the people's authorization, leaving the master uneasy. He says that the Saint of Compassion was also named in the Bible, and the Vatican knows she requested the baptismal ceremony, because Eden was acting alone, not reporting his movements to the ruins of Arhan, and while his past results were worthy of praise, these were not, since no one can use divine grace without the permission of their divinity, God, and Haxoreth says that's correct, and that's why he entered the political world, placing a hand on the guard's shoulder and saying that regardless he had a little envy in his eyes, because all procedures and formalities exist for a purpose, and he must not forget that fact. Gavlin tries to argue that it was for the survival of the organization, but Haxoreth says that this place merely serves God in an efficient and unsupported way. So that meant Eden was entirely capable of serving God with his body, and he would shackle him if he forgot the essence of faith. But looking at it this way, it seemed that bad omens were beginning to move, and he needed to see his disciple for himself before the insects began to devour him. A festival is happening on the ship while the saint uses her power, and Eden observes from afar, saying the words showed their hard work, since it had been 4 days since he'd been finding comfort among the people. Yuan comes down the stairs, asking Daryl to wait a moment. The hunter apologizes for trying to descend quietly, but that thing was heavier than expected, and Yuan complains about him using weight as an excuse. Eden smiles, asking what they were doing in the middle of the night, but Daryl apologizes for intruding first, and Yuan offers a drink, saying it wasn't so bad as to be thrown away. Then the hunter says he has something to tell his master, just for a moment, and Eden agrees, telling him to speak freely. Yuan apologizes for saying this so suddenly, but he thinks they should stop here, and the reason is that he doesn't want to hinder his lord's mission because of his own lack of skill. Eden reflects that they're right, since both were now capable enough and their powers had improved day by day. They would have been the ones to lose their lives if they had been with him when he faced Elpis. Eden asks if that's what they mean, and if they truly want to leave. Yuan denies it, saying he wants to serve him until his last breath, and Daryl feels the same. Eden wants to know exactly what they need, and only then can he allow it. Both say that the Sword Saint of the North will take care of them for a while, and if they work hard, they may have a chance to live freely someday. Eden reflects that's what it meant. They were frustrated at not being able to help, and it was admirable that they didn't give up even while burning with ambition. But in that case, he will pull them back when they grow stronger, saying the old man was alone, and he will demand an official order for this place. His subordinates laugh, saying they won't let him down. Eden reflects that both of them must grow strong enough in the future to survive, wondering when they became so passionate, and Daryl asks if they can drink together, since it's not against the rules. Thus, they share the drink, making a toast for the liberation of the people. The next day, at the port of the city of Iria, the siren descend calling for the agent of God, and asking if the hero from the Bible had arrived, while someone in the crowd wonders if that's the reason for all the excitement. The paladin who obeys the church and acts on his own, but a man points out, because several boats were carrying the hero mentioned in the Bible and were approaching. Eden was beside Uriel. The girl comments that they can't eavesdrop from the outside, but they would investigate as soon as possible, and Eden says it was simply a divine revelation. She laughs in her final moments there, saying that those words sounded like blasphemy. Eden slowly controls the crowd as they disembark from the boat, but someone yells for him to stop, because this heroic paladin would be arrested for violating church laws and acting independently. Eden agrees with that and says the human rights of the Siren tribe must be protected. The paladin protests, saying they shouldn't be protected because they are heretics. Eden says they were forgiven of their crimes through divine grace, and that means they have the right to remain under the authority of the sea god. The man calls him a bastard and says the problem is that he used divine grace without permission. But Xerath approaches, telling him to wait, then walks over with Sileron and Jude. Haxoreth approaches his disciple with a smile on his face. The paladin says the Inquisitor has finally arrived, and he was just about to send the people away. However, the old man glances sideways, saying that sending all those heretics away was excessive. He tries to boast that it was his duty as a paladin, asking only for a moment to explain everything. But Xerath interrupts him, saying he misunderstood his words, and so he'll give the Paladin one last chance, wanting to know who he was about to escort, and the man thinks something feels wrong, saying that due to the church's treatment of heretics, he would arrest the Paladin Eden. But Siluran grits her teeth, asking if he doesn't understand and if his brain is just for decoration, because if so, she'll take a look. But Xerath interrupts, saying he'll take it from there. He wants to know how the knight dares to try sending away someone who is recognized as a hero by the Bible itself.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.